Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Mantry, and this week I'm here with
Rob H.
And Austin Pond.
The disembodied voice of Austin, our producer.
Yes,
That's right.
yes. It was enough trouble for me to get our YouTube video working with split screen, and trying to push our luck to triple screen was beyond my capabilities for today.
Yeah, we don't have a graphic for that either. I guess
That's right.
Well, I don't even know. Could we do that? Could we like take a little square and put like Austin in a little square like off to the side?
Oh, there you go.
That's what we can do next time.
We'll work on that for one day, but until then, this is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and I am a very, very sad panda this week.
He is sad.
My goodness.
Can we get that out of the way? Let's just get it out of the way.
Very quickly. Okay, I was selling. If you're watching the YouTube video, I'm going to be doing some weird transitions so that we avoid weirdness. So I was selling my Kuro plasma. We'll keep the details of who I was selling it to a mystery for the moment. But here we go. This is what it looked like if you're watching the video before I sent it off. Yes, I do have a Connect camera above there.
For those of you that are listening to this on the podcast and not seeing the video, it is the image of a perfectly fine-looking plasma television.
Yeah. Now it's actually turned on. You can see that it's set to input 6 there if you're seeing it on the video. Yep. So it's functioning. Screen looks good, and this is what it looked like when it arrived. At the other end.
It looks like it's on the ground, maybe, and
yeah, because it was just taken out of the package.
Yeah, taken out of the package, and it looks to be scratches. Maybe are those scratches, Rob?
Oh no, those
like these lines through there.
Yeah, that would be a plasma panel in behind the front glass. The plasma panel itself cracked. So the display is completely inoperable, completely irreparable, since they don't make them anymore, and there is a way to get it back. And that has been my life for the past week.
So
bad times.
Do they try to like fold it in half and put it in the mailbox? Is that kind of what happened?
No, I'm pretty. I mean, it was packed very well. I'm pretty sure that since it went via courier, and couriers like to say, "Oh, this is a 150-pound package." You know what would work really well is if we dropped it from about 5 feet high, right? Mm-hmm. I can't say that's for sure what happened, but that's what it kind of looks like. If it was placed on the ground, this would not happen with all of its styrofoam.
So you sold
it
in town?
No. This is shipping across the continent.
Oh, okay. So when you say courier, I think like the guy on the bicycle.
Yeah.
So no. I guess it wasn't that.
So
right.
that's it.
Whoever was
leaving
buying,
it there.
Rob's Kuro, I'm sorry that you do not have it.
Yeah.
Rob, I am also sorry that you do not have the money. I imagine you don't have that.
It's got to get refunded, and then it was insured, so I should get reimbursed. But you know, insurance companies, they love to pay out claims.
They are very big on giving people money. Just that's their job. That's their job. That's what they do. It's their thing. This is AV Rant. This is not Rob's little boo-hoo. I lost.
Yeah, because Tom never tells story about his personal life, and mine wasn't even home theater related or anything.
No, it's just all completely off the wall, like out of left field. Like who's supposed to care about this crap? Anyways, so do you want to mention the carrier? Do you want to do that? Do you want
It went through multiple, of course. It went through TNT and UPS, and you can guess which one I'm blaming. So, but you know what? We don't know because it was in a box. The box did not appear vastly damaged from the outside. We do not know at what point it was dropped by someone, and of course, they will claim it was the person who bought the TV and somehow magically dropped it themselves when they took it into their living room. I'm sure that's what their insurance adjuster will say. So,
all right, this is AV Rant, the home theater and AV podcast that answers your questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That will go to Austin,
our disembodied voice today.
Yes.
The voice, that weird voice of your conscience. This is what it sounds like, and outside of your head and in ours. And Austin will put get out. Austin will 2 subs. You need 2 subs. Austin will put your question on the list, and you can also email us directly at rob@avrant and tom@avrant.com. You go to the website www.avrant.com, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. We're very active over there. Twitter @FirstReflect for Rob, @avrant_Tom for me, and that Austin, T-E-N, Austin Pond for Austin, our producer, who has his own podcast. It's We Watch Movies Podcast. It is a podcast about radioactive monkeys.
That's right.
It's a thing. It's a real problem. If you live in an area where they have monkeys, that's troublesome. But when they're radioactive, then you really need to have some advice, and that's what Austin does. He is the expert on the radioactive monkeys.
Yep.
That's the thing.
Run.
Run.
That's the advice.
That's
Run.
it. That's
Short
step
podcast.
one. Step one, run. Step two, have a friend that you're fairly certain is slower.
At least run faster than your friend. That's right.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll start off here, and we'll let Austin read the questions as we get towards the bottom here. But let's start off with our listeners of the week. We want to always thank our listeners of the week. There's two ways you become listeners of the week. The first is to go to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which can send you to a PayPal donation page where you can use your PayPal account to transfer money from your account to our account, which will go to help fund the podcast, pay for all our hosting fees and all that. It also may end up having to help Rob with his insurance claim. Some sort of lawyer sort of action. I don't know. It's going to happen. I'm not gonna. I don't know. That's what we gotta do. That's what we gotta do. We gotta keep you out of jail and in the green, Rob. Or you can also use your credit card. It all goes through PayPal and all that. And we had a couple listeners this week who were nice enough to give us donations. We want to thank Kyle, Richard, Jay, and Jorge. George. I always like to say Jorge. Anyways,
I'm pretty sure that one's George.
I'm pretty sure it is too, but I like saying Jorge.
Okay.
I just do. It's fun to say.
Kyle, Richard, Jay, George, thank you all so much for your donations.
George also purchased a Denon AVR X4000 from Accessories for Less and EMP Tech Impression Series speakers based on recommendations, and he says he would have purchased smaller dual SVS subwoofers rather than the single massive PB13 Ultra if he had started listening to us earlier. Do we talk about him later? Does he have the question?
It comes up later. That's right.
We also want to thank Jay, who took the other way of becoming a listener of the week. He did that by going to HSU Research, or SHU Research, or SHU, I don't know how you say it. Well, I'm not saying it like that.
No.
And he let them know, I'm sorry, I refuse to say she when there's clearly non-E anywhere in that name. He went to he bought something from them, his dual VTF-3 Mk5 subwoofers, and he let them know he bought them because of us. So thank you, Jay.
Yes, thank you very much, Jay. Much appreciated for all the support from all our listeners of the week.
Thank you.
That's right. In the news this week, we have a couple of things going on via Antoine on Twitter. He sent us a link to CEDIA. They announced their Best New Products finalists. The winners will be announced at this year's CEDIA Expo, which is on September 16th. It used to be in October, didn't it? No?
It's off in September. Yeah,
I might be wrong about that. As expected, it's mostly custom installation gear, but Antoine noticed that the only consumer-level AV receiver in the entire list is the Sony STRZA 500ES. What do we think?
5000 ES.
5,000, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Should we be recommending this Sony over the Denon Marantz? No. The key... Now, I don't know how CEDIA does it, but I know that many of these lists require that you submit your product for consideration, and there is a submission fee.
Yep.
Usually
Audioholics does it that way.
That's the way Audioholics does it as well. And that's just kind of industry standard. So Denon and Marantz and many other people are like, I don't want to pay that. And they'll do it, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit odd when there's only one finalist in a category, so you can kind of guess who submitted to that category. More than that, though, this particular Sony, its differentiating factor, it's about a $2,500 AV receiver, as far as I know, retail price. It has an 8-port Ethernet switcher built into it. So that's the thing that makes it more like potentially for custom integrators, and that's sort of the one feature that sets it apart from most of the other AV receivers that are out there right now, and it's also the only one that was submitted apparently. So yeah, that's why. I think it's
like, cross your fingers, Sony. Could happen. This could be your year.
It does do Atmos. It does do DTS-X. It does 7.2.4. So you know what? I don't have a problem if someone wants to consider this. But just because it is a finalist on the CEDIA list, I would not say that automatically makes it better than all the other AV receivers out there. Because, yeah, if they had submitted it, maybe someone else would have won.
Yeah, and Audioholics also does lists that are not like that. Most of the lists, there's only the one for I don't even know how they get it, but the products of the year stuff like that.
Yeah, product of the year awards. Yeah,
that stuff is just. We just discuss it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, it's usually based on whatever reviews were done by Audioholics throughout the year.
I can't give you a product of the year if I've never touched your product. I'm sorry. That's not the way we work. So, I mean, I've gone to bat for products where they're like, I don't know, that one didn't seem that great. I'm like, I reviewed it. I'm telling you, it's great, and it's gotten into that way. So, most of the stuff from Moyaholics is not that one. Chinese conglomerate LeEco.
I'm pretty sure it's Eco, so I don't know if it's Le or Lee, but LeEco. Yeah.
It's not sounding Chinese at all. It's sounding very French at this point. But anyways, LeEco or Eco bought Vizio for $2 billion.
They bought Vizio. They bought Vizio. I mean, it still has to be approved. It's not finalized yet, but
isn't Vizio a Chinese company, anyways?
No, they're American. They're based in California.
I did not know that. Vizio will continue to operate as a fully owned subsidiary. LeEco, formerly La TV, La TV, I don't know. It's Chinese largest internet content distribution company, and they plan to leverage Vizio's OTT platforms.
Over the top.
That's right. And data mining software to expand their services globally. Oh, doesn't that just make me feel fantastic? I am currently less comfortable owning a Vizio than I was literally 5 seconds ago. So the Chinese government will have access to. Hey, this is good. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now. I've never ever said this, and I have been known because the program I use, CamTwist, that puts my picture up here, and I can do the graphic stuff with it and stuff like that. And eventually, if I ever put my green screen up behind me, it will be able to do the green screen stuff and all that. All that, I sometimes leave it on. And I forget, and I'll like walk by my computer, and I'll see the little green light on. I'm like, oh crap, I left the thing on again.
Yeah.
I mean, it never really bothers me. But if I got a Vizio TV with a camera in it, I would now be putting on little black tape. I'm sorry, I would. I would also be less comfortable using their apps too. Or
the data mining has been all about what you're watching, and that is all being tracked and sent to Vizio. And so, now that is going to this.
Signing into apps on the Vizio TV, I'd be less comfortable with all that stuff. I'm sorry, I am not xenophobic and or any of those other things, but the Chinese. And I would feel the exact same way if Russia bought them or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want like a foreign superpower to be able to look into my living room. I mean, I'm not doing anything they should be interested in anyways, but, if they wanted to, like, shut down Google or something, I don't know, maybe they could use my password to help with that, so I would be less comfortable. Anyways, so that's that.
Yeah.
All right, the Nintendo NX is, I guess, something. What is it? Is it a new thing? It's a new console?
That's going to be their new console. They've said it's coming out in March of next year, 2017, and it was, like, it's going to be replacing the Wii U, but now it's not so much rumors that this isn't fully confirmed. Like, Nintendo themselves have not sent out a press release to say this is what it is, but these are like almost all but confirmed sources. So.
Yeah, it seems awfully fast for another Nintendo.
Well, because the Wii U did not do well
at all. It's a failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, the Nintendo NX is supposedly an NVIDIA Tegra powered portable with detachable controllers and a TV dock.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Really dicey to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna click on this. I didn't click on it before because I didn't care. I don't care about Nintendo. Nintendo hasn't done the thing I've been concerned about in forever. Is there gonna be? It looks like a tablet. It's a tablet. It's a tablet.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get a picture up here on screen. 1 second. I'm taking my time.
That looks.
Here we go.
Extremely.
There we go. For our viewers on YouTube, this is a mock-up. This is not official in any means, but this is sort of a mock-up of what it's expected to kind of be. And then it kind of reminds me of this, which is the Razer Edge.
Yes.
Which was a thing that already existed. And I'm like, that looks kind of similar to that.
I hate to say it. I dislike both of those things.
That
controller makes me want to slap somebody. Let's be honest here.
The NVIDIA Tegra processor is what is in the NVIDIA Shield TV right now, and there's a new version, like a new update to the Tegra processor set to come out very soon, which is supposed to be basically the same power but uses less electricity. So that's going to be more than likely what is in this, since it's going to be a portable with a battery.
I could tell you right now, if someone gave me this thing, I'd probably just sell it. That's kind of the way I feel about it. It looks really stupid. Maybe it'll be good. I know. This is literally the first time I ever saw it was I looked at it and went, nope. So that's just it. All right. Ultra HD Blu-ray player prices have started dropping in order to compete with the price of the Xbox One S.
Yep.
I don't know why anybody's trying to compete with that piece of crap, but whatever.
The one that cannot pass you Atmos and DTS:X audio. But I guess
I
most
just
people
honestly
are just
can't
looking
get
at the
behind the
price.
product that's literally only does 50% of what it's supposed to do. In
So
my idea.
the Philips Ultra
mind.
HD Blu-ray players that are out there right now, they have dropped to $299. At least at Amazon, they have. So they are in line now with what will be the least expensive Xbox One S, the 500 gigabyte Xbox One S, which will launch on August 23rd. The
But they've
2
already
terabyte.
launched a 2 terabyte.
Yeah.
One.
I mean, on the day that we're recording this, Monday, the August 1st, it hasn't launched just yet. It's launching tomorrow. But by the time people hear this, it will have launched the 2 terabyte one. But the 2 terabyte one costs $400, which is the same price as the Samsung Ultra HD Blu-ray player, or what the Philips Ultra HD Blu-ray player had at its original retail price. But now the Samsung can be had for like $320, at least on Amazon, and the Philips at $299. So, yeah. And since those can send you Atmos and DTS:X audio, I'd go for one of those.
Well, they could fix that. Like it's gonna
Yes,
have.
eventually they could.
They're not
not a
gonna.
hardware thing. They could patch it, couldn't they?
They're not gonna fix it.
No,
Why
they
would they
probably
fix it?
not.
They haven't fixed it yet. They haven't passed. I can't bitstream out True HD right now.
Yeah.
It's still. You put it in 7.1 and you put a 5.1 signal. You get the sides out the back.
Yeah.
They're not gonna fix that. They're
It's
in
just
no
not
way interested.
not enough people out there care and
No,
yell
I
about it.
guess
So.
not.
Yeah.
Yell some more, people.
I clearly care. Like I would actually be.
It is-
like my son is now. He just turned 13. My oldest son just turned 13, and his cousin has an Xbox One, and he plays Minecraft and other stuff all the time, and they want to start playing games together. And I'm like, if this new Xbox One actually had, did the stuff that it was supposed to do, I would be making a case for my wife right now about doing this. But I am never going to purchase a product ever. Like, never going to purchase a product that won't put out all the audio. I'm sorry. That's like a complete deal breaker. I also would not buy a TV that does not put up a picture or doesn't put up you know what I mean? I just wouldn't do that. So, I don't know. It's really stupid. Anyways, not that I'm bitter or anything. Not that I'm bitter.
Not ranty at all.
Not at all. We should rename the podcast AV Totally Laid Back and Cool with Everything.
Yep.
Because that's what we are. All right, the Philips 8600 series Dolby Vision TVs won't be coming out until 2017.
Speaking of looking for an alternative for Vizio, because it was announced back at CES that the 65-inch 8600 series from Philips was going to cost $1,700 retail, which is a very attractive price. Dolby Vision, HDR10 support as well, full array local dimming, wide color gamut support, so all very, very promising. And then they're like, yeah, Dolby Vision has changed a little bit in its spec, and we're behind schedule, and now it's not coming till 2017, and we'll see if that happens. So they do have some 4K HDR10 televisions out right now. The 65-inch costs $2,500, so it's $500 more expensive than the Vizio. So sad news all around. I'm disappointed by this. But there it is. Don't go looking for that 8600 TV that, if you were listening to this podcast several months ago, I was saying, hey, maybe wait till July, see what that's all about. Well, it's not here.
It is August.
Yeah.
Comments. One comment. We have one comment. Wesley, who was the guy who was having the weird volume jumps on his receiver when watching TV using his Comcast DVR, we thought it was Gremlins? Or perhaps his local Comcast station or something. Yeah. Well, the problem is finally solved. And the answer was, I don't know, I can't do the thing. Anyways, I was trying to, for those who know what
drum roll, Drum
roll. Just I can't make that noise. Anyways, the Denon got a firmware update last week, and since the volume jumps have stopped, I don't remember getting a firmware update on my Denon. I don't know that I would know that I got one.
Well, I'm sure it depends on the model. I mean, not all models get the same firmware update.
I thought he had X4000 too, didn't he?
Did he?
I thought so.
No, I can't remember.
I might be wrong. I don't know.
It's possible.
I think he might have had a 4200.
I'm literally looking at my Denon going, why haven't you updated? I'm looking at it right now going, what's wrong with you? Come on, man. Stay up with the times.
In any case, hooray, I guess, but...
well, it's like
we
Bill.
Help.
We had no idea. Something random we would never have suggested, fixed it, whatever.
Well,
long as it's fixed.
Also can't update the firmware if there is no firmware update to apply. So
and this is the only guy having the problem. I can't believe he's the only guy having the problem.
That is weird. Yeah.
That's what makes me think that I'm glad that it worked. I'm glad that it worked.
Yes,
I'm wondering if the firmware update actually reset something that was weird inside there that had just gotten out of whack. You know, kind of the turn it off, turn it back on thing. But he had already factory reset the thing, right? If I remember correctly.
Oh yeah.
We had gone through all that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm still going with Gremlins, dude. Yeah. And I would not be looking this gift horse in the mouth. I might not even turn it on ever again. Just go, you know what?
Or off. Maybe if it's working, just never turn it off.
Never turn it off.
Always
At this point,
leave it on.
Change nothing. Don't change
Attach
the
it
volume.
to the generator.
No.
Never power down.
No more switching of inputs. Nothing. You can watch that thing that is last watched, and that's it. You're done. You can't do anything. You got to buy a new receiver, which would have solved the problem.
We have a gazillion questions. We're going to go through as many as we can. Austin is going to read them, and he's going to read them very quickly, right, Austin?
That sounds like Austin.
I guess.
All right. Let's go, Austin. Hit us.
All right. So, Josh Pollard from the Digital Media Zone is getting a second Xbox One to use at his desk. Connecting it to his computer monitor is easy since he has 3 ports on the HDMI switch he uses to switch between his 2 PCs. But what about the audio? For his PC, he has cheap PC speakers for when the kids watch stupid YouTube videos, and headphones for when he's seriously watching something or listening to something.
Like
he's having YouTube a small,
like stupid YouTube videos.
Serious YouTube videos. He thinks having a small 2.1 channel receiver for the Xbox would be cool, but also probably overkill. And he almost always plays games with a headset anyway. After some research, he came across an HDMI audio extractor. Could he plug his PCs and Xbox One into the HDMI switch, then output the HDMI switch into the input of the audio extractor, and then the output of that into his monitor, while using headphone jack output from the audio extractor to his PC speakers or his headset?
Yes.
It says it supports HDCP and EDID, so it seems like it ought to work without an issue.
Yeah, I read the reviews of the particular one that he sent us, which was something. I don't know what it was.
It's on Amazon. It's only $26.
Yeah, the reviews
I have one that looks exactly like this, except as a different brand.
I'm sure it is the same thing.
I'm sure it is. It works fine. I've never had any trouble with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like half the people are like, works great, no problems, and then there's like these slew of reviews like, piece of crap doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
I've never put 3 things off a switch into it, but I don't know about that.
It should work for $26. Whatever, dude. Try it and send it back.
Yeah, and it's also Amazon, so yeah.
Hey, I just got shoes from Amazon. I ordered 3, 4, 5. I don't remember, a bunch of them, like all different sizes and stuff, and got them all in and looked at them and tried them on and set back the ones I didn't want. Now I will say that it used to be Amazon was always like UPS or FedEx or something like that, right? Now all the returns, like all the returns I've gotten from them are USPS. United States Postal Service,
yeah.
Which means you have to actually go into the post office. Which, if you haven't been into the post office lately, it's like the DMV, except for worse. So, like, it is really bad. So, luckily, if you have they'll give you the label, and you can just throw it. Usually, they'll just say, hey, or if you go to one of the big ones, they'll have like a box drop that you can put it into. And that one's not so bad. But if you actually have to wait in line, you're like, you got to schedule like 3 hours.
Now, the caveat for an HDMI audio extractor like this is that it's just a digital to audio converter. It is not a decoder of any type. Right. So you must make sure that what is being output from your sources is 2-channel PCM. Because that all you want is 2 channels. You're trying to send this into a pair of PC speakers or a pair of headphones. So it's totally fine that what's coming out of your Xbox or what's coming out of either of your computers is 2-channel PCM originally. That's what you want, because all this little audio extractor can do is then convert that 2-channel PCM to 2-channel analog audio and output it from essentially a headphone jack. So that will work just fine. Now, if you're thinking you'd like to have full surround sound, again, it's not a decoder, but Monoprice does have a 7.1 HDMI audio extractor. It has to be 7.1 PCM going into there. So all the decoding already has to be done. That's fine coming from a Blu-ray player, or, fine coming from your Xbox.
No, because if it's sending out 5.1, we know it won't send it out correctly.
But technically, the 7.1 PCM signal is something you can set it to send out. So there is a way to do that with the Monoprice box. Monoprice's price on the 7.1 audio extractor is $60. So it's not, insanity to give that a try. And then I will just mention that the unit I most often recommend to people who are trying to do this is actually, again, from Monoprice, and it is a 4-in, 2-out HDMI matrix switch that also extracts the audio. And that goes for $50. So a lot of times it's very handy because any source to either display that you have connected and extract the audio while you're doing it. So
I'll be honest, if it were me, I'd be looking at a cheap AV receiver from...
Really?
Texas. I would. I know it's overkill.
Compared to like $26 though.
26
it doesn't have to be... It could be old, even. It doesn't have to be.
I would be looking.
He's still looking for HDMI switching at the least, though. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But I just kind of I would go with a receiver, and then I would first you just use it like a headphone jack. That's all you're using it for, right? But eventually you're like, I've got these extra speakers, and now I can share my music with the rest. Of the world.
I mean, with an AV receiver, it would have to be regular passive speakers as well, not just computer speakers, because the computer speakers are already powered and just need a 3.5 millimeter jack.
Right? Yeah, he throws that into the headphone jack.
Into the headphone output. Okay.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Or he can get
that
function.
Yeah,
it's fine. Just don't turn the volume up very high.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I can dig it.
I think that I'd rather spend, instead of spending $26 on something that is probably going to break in about 3 months anyways, I would spend $100 on or $120 on like the cheapest entry level AV, because if all he's doing is HDMI switching anyways.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can probably find one on like eBay or Craigslist or something, right? Somebody's got to be ditching. So all you need is HDMI switching.
You just need enough HDMI inputs. That's all you need.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I would do. All right. I'm gonna read this one. I don't know why. Led's friend Randy. Randy needs a Navy receiver, a 4K and Atmos aren't concerns, but he has a separate stereo preamp and amp for music listening. I remember this guy. It's a Carver 1.5T and a Carver C1. I have no idea what those are, but I'm sure they're fantastic units.
Stereo preamp and amplifier.
As they go. Anyways, he needs to be able to use those as well. So the system is 5.2 and 11 by 9 room. 11 by 19 room with all clipped speakers. He'd like to stay under $300 if possible, and is concerned about having enough watts per channel and as low distortion as possible. Okay. Looking at accessories for less, he found a Onkyo, a Yamaha, another Yamaha, and a Marantz. But he'd rather stay under $300. The Marantz was a $450.
Yeah.
So okay, what is the issue here, really? He just wants a receiver.
Yeah.
But he still wants to use his preamp and amp?
Yeah. For a dedicated stereo listing. With, I'm assuming, a different pair of speakers.
Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Well, how is he connecting both to his clipped
I
towers?
think that's what I think. I think that's what he's doing.
He just says clipped speakers.
I think that's what he's doing. In which case, you can't. You can't connect two different amps to the same speakers.
I seem to recall he had some other speakers.
If that's the case, then all you do is you put them all in the same room and everything's fine.
Well, no, this isn't LED. This is LED's friend.
Yeah, that's
we've
right.
never heard of before, have we?
Yeah, we answered one question from him a little ways back, if I remember correctly. But
I think that was LED's question.
It could be. Either way, okay, Randy, if you are trying to connect everything up to the same speakers, you can't. You can't put two amps onto the same set of speakers.
Yeah.
You can't do that. It will
If you want to go into protection mode, you can.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah. How you feel about watching one of these things explode? Because that might happen.
Unless you have a speaker wire selector switch.
Yes.
If you get a speaker wire selector switch, then you can, and then you have to obviously switch to whatever amplifier you were using at the time. I really, in my heart and in my memory, believe that he had a second set of speakers
if
just
that's
for
the case,
stereo.
then you're fine. Then all you have to do is choose the right receiver for yourself, and you'll be just okay. But if it is the same set of speakers, and you're not told if it's the amp that you're worried about, and you can get something with pre-outs, in which most of these will, I think all of these will have stereo pre-outs at least.
No.
But you will look at
Onkyo does
stereo pre-outs, and you can use the amp and not the preamp. If the preamp
Right.
is something you really absolutely have to have, then you're going to have to get something else. Now, let's pretend that just has to be said. So he found the Onkyo, Yamaha, and a Marantz, and I feel like he's missing a specific model of receiver, but I can't put my name. What is the name of it? I think it starts with a duh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta be Denon.
I would be
over at
going.
Accessories for Less.
I would be looking at Denon, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
Now, I was going on the assumption that he's got his 2-channel setup and he wants to keep it, and for some reason he just wants to be able to, take a source that's connected to his new surround sound receiver and still have it play via his 2-channel system. And that he's wanting, hopefully, the best sound quality they can go for. And since he put it in there that he might consider that Marantz, although 450 is too high, I'm like, what about $380? Because I know that's over 300, but it's under the 450 mark, and that gets you into a Denon X series. And the whole reason I like the X series is because then you get Audyssey Multi-EQ XT, whereas anything below the X series is regular Multi-EQ, which is not terrible, but XT is a significant step up and a very worthwhile one in my opinion. Also, once you get to the X series, you get Zone 2 pre-outs, whereas those don't exist on the S series that is below that. Now, yeah, Austin, you mentioned one of those Onkyos actually does have like Zone 2 pre-outs or
no, I was saying I don't think that bottom Onkyo has.
Yeah, no, I was
pre-outs.
looking at these, and none of these I saw Zone 2 pre-outs. Now, all of them had the where you could, if it was 7 channels, you could assign the surround back speaker binding posts to Zone 2, but they didn't have separate Zone 2 pre-outs, whereas the X1200, that's the one I'm talking about, the AVR X1200W, $380 at Accessories for Less, it gets you Zone 2 pre-outs. Now, that will only take analog signals, right? It's not going to translate HDMI into Zone 2. It's not going to even translate optical audio into Zone 2, but it will send a stereo left-right red and white analog plug. That it will send that to Zone 2, so you could use that to power your Carver setup. And then it has Multi-EQ XT, which is the big step up for me. So if you're willing to wiggle to 380, that's the one I really like. If you're not willing to wiggle to 380, then you can look at like the S910 or the S920, but then you're losing the Zone 2 pre-outs. And you're going down to Multi-EQ.
So the idea here is that he's going to have his AV receiver, all his stuff plugged into his AV receiver.
That's right.
And then something's going to be plugged from the AV receiver into the Carver preamp.
Yep.
And that's going to have to be either pre-outs or Zone 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the idea.
I kind of...
that's the least expensive I can get you to get you all the features that were requested.
So the second question is, does he really need Audyssey, and how much would it really help in the setup? Well, we don't know how much it'll help in your setup. How terrible is your room? And by terrible, I mean how acoustically terrible is it? Is it made of marble? Maybe, because we've had rooms that were made of marble. That has been a problem. The guy's like, should I add more subwoofers? I'm like, less marble. Can't get rid of the marble. I don't know, tell you, dude. So. Yes, it will help. It probably. How much will it help? I don't know. How flexible is your subwoofer placement? How many subwoofers are you planning on having? What the real question here, if we go back up, he says he is concerned about having enough watts per channel and as low distortion as possible.
Right.
There is
clip speakers.
You have clip speakers. That is the end of your concern.
Yeah. In a not gigantic room.
No, 11 by 19
11
is
by 19. So
clips scoffs. 11 by 19. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
If you put the speakers all the way on the front wall, you sat on the back wall, they'd be like, all right, now this is a challenge.
Yeah. Can you generate 0.3 of a watt? I think you can. And so you are now fine.
You are good.
Yeah.
It will be fine. You have clip speakers. You will be fine. So the clip speakers are those kind of speakers where people go, do I need an external amp? And I have to stop laughing before I can answer their question, because you do not need an external amp. So how much will Audyssey help? It depends on how bad your room is and how well you're able to. And I say how bad your room is, making it sound like if it's really bad, it'll help more. No, if it's really bad, it can do less. If you can actually have some placement options for your subwoofers, and you have good a little bit of room treatments here and there, lots of plush stuff around. Perhaps Audyssey will make a huge difference. It certainly won't. Generally, it won't hurt things. Unless,
but if you're going to do it, I think it's worth getting the version that works better than most others, and
Right.
stepping up to Multi-Q XT, in my opinion, is very much worthwhile. So since we're talking about $80, to me, that's the way to go. Sometimes it's worth spending a little bit more to get something a little bit better, and this is one of those times, in my opinion. So
Right.
yeah.
All right,
Austin.
Infinite Gary.
Infinite Gary. That's why I read that one, so that you could read it, Infinite Gary.
Okay. Are we going back and forth or something?
I don't know. I just did that.
Gary wonders, do we think potential new trade agreements made after the U.S. presidential elections could cause a shift to more electronics being made in the USA? It seems to Gary that overseas manufacturing is too firmly entrenched to be changed.
Well, we're already seeing more stuff come back to the USA, like Emotiva. They always used to make their stuff in China. Now they're making stuff in the USA. ATI always has made their stuff in the USA, but even Apple has brought a couple of things over here to the North America, at least.
Well, they do final assembly in the US. They don't really do manufacturing,
but I mean, it's entirely a cost thing. They don't care. They'll go anywhere as long as the cost is lower.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly right. I don't think anything that this election cycle, they promise about, I'm going to bring jobs back, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Well, look, I mean, if somebody got in there and managed to convince the U.S. government to go through all the stages they have to go through to actually pass some legislation and convince them to enact like crazy high tariffs on stuff that is manufactured in China, then yeah, that could influence companies. I mean, that would be one way that legislation could do that, but
doesn't seem likely to happen.
Will either candidate do that? Will it, even if they propose the bill, will it actually make it through House and Senate and then get signed into law? So I mean, there's a lot of ifs here. But if the price becomes more expensive to make it in China than it does to make it in the U.S., you better believe they'll come back to the U.S. So it's purely profit driven.
Yeah, you guys remember that I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and we were there because there was a mining boom. And my wife's a civil engineer, and she was there working with the mining companies, and it was great. And they just kept raising the taxes and raising the taxes and raising it. I don't know if this is true, but this is my impression from what I was told by the other Aussies that were working in the industry. But it seemed to be that they just kept raising the prices until the mining industry went, it's too expensive here. We're going to, I think they went to South Africa or something. I don't remember. They left and took the jobs with them. And now they're in a recession, or at least they were. I think they still are. But it was like a delayed recession. Like we were starting to bounce back, and they was just really starting to hit them. So it's all about the greenbacks. It's all about the money. They're going to go wherever that money is, and if that money is, if they make it cheaper, I mean that's why you see headquarters of major U.S. companies change locations every couple of years, 4 or 5 or 6, sometimes 10 years. They don't always, like Microsoft and Apple, stick in one place as it being their place. A lot of times they change. They'll be in Kansas City, or they'll be in Duluth, or they'll be here, or they'll be there. It's because they changed the tax code in those cities to attract these corporate headquarters for the jobs. That's what they want. And they'll change the tax code, and then the jobs will come, and everybody will be happy, and then somebody will say, well, hey, it's not fair that they're here making all this money. They get all these tax breaks, and somebody will run on the platform of, I'm going to raise these taxes for these fat cats. They start raising the taxes. They're like, well, that's okay, I guess. And then they raise the taxes again. They're like, oh, that's, I guess. And about the third time, they're like, we are out. Who else has got a good deal for us? And that's what will happen here, too, Gary. So it's all about the money.
Yep. Next one, Austin.
What would we recommend for a fabric that could be used to cover glossy speakers and eliminate light reflections? Gary contacted Seymour AV, and they suggested the Fidelio Black Velvet. Is there anything else we would recommend more highly?
So Seymour AV is a great resource for this because they sell DIY fabric, and they do actually sell Fidelio Black Velvet, which is like 99.7% light absorptive. It is about the blackest thing you can get. And they sell it in rolls that are 48 inches wide, and then they sell it for basically $12 per linear foot of this 48-inch wide roll. So it's not exactly super cheap. Although if you're just wrapping it around the side of a speaker, you shouldn't need that much of it, so it's not like insanely expensive. But still, like, you wouldn't want to cover your walls with the stuff. That would get very expensive. So
Gary might. He might want to.
Gary very well might. If all you care about is the utmost performance, then nothing really beats that. Now, Seymour does sell something which is what I would be recommending to most people if they want to do this, which is baritone velvet, which is like 99.4% light absorptive, you know? So there's like a 0.3% in there, which is, you know, not absolutely nothing when we're talking about light, but it's still very, very absorptive. That comes in 60-inch wide rolls, so it's already, you know, substantially wider. It's a foot wider to begin with, and then it's $10 per linear foot instead of 12. So it's a bigger roll and less expensive per linear foot. That's the one I'd recommend to most people, but Gary is not most people, so by all means go for the Fidelio Velvet, because otherwise you'll be like, I got baritone, and if I shine like one of those super bright LED flashlights directly onto it, it doesn't absorb all the light. It isn't a black hole. And the Fidelio Velvet is closer.
That super black stuff they made.
That carbon nanotube stuff? Sure.
That stuff is great. It's so black.
Yeah,
like
you your
put
brain can't even make sense of what it is.
You put it in a shadow, and it's darker than the shadow.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And it makes everything look weird. Gary's making speaker Burqas. That's about the only thing I could think of when I said that. So I'm like, he's making a Burqa for a speaker. Have you ever seen the Face Kini? Have you seen those things?
Nope.
Have you not Googled Face Kini? If you would like to not
Googled
sleep
Face
tonight, Google Face Kini. It is horrifying. It is horrifying. It's a trend for keeping the sun off your face, so they made this Face Kini thing that it is terrifying, is what it is. But yes, Face Kini. You are welcome.
All right.
To all of you people who are like, oh, what have I done? That's gonna be your night. I'm telling you. I bet Austin's doing it right now.
I am not.
It is terrible. But yeah, once again, it's funny because I actually thought about this week. I was watching movies in here this week. For some reason, I've watched a lot of movies. We watched. We had Thor. We had people over, and they brought Thor with them, so we watched Thor in here. Then I watched something else with the kids. I can't remember what I watched. We watched X-Men First Class, and then afterwards they went to bed, and I was like, Deadpool, and I watched Deadpool. It was like so I was watching a lot of movies in here, and my speakers are glossy, and I thought I was looking over, and I thought there's a reflection of those speakers, and then you know what I did? I stopped looking at the speakers. I started looking at the screen, and it no longer bothered me. But if it does bother you, Gary, there's just this is certainly an option. There's also the option to buy non-glossy speakers, but that's not going to be good enough.
Well, he already has expensive speakers. That's
well, I'm just saying the non-glossy speakers would still be reflective. Even those flat black ones are still.
So Ray Coronado chimed in. He says over at Joanne Fabric, they have something called Royalty 3 Velvet. Well, he says is about the blackest thing that he personally has ever seen. So that I don't know why it's between $10 and $12 per yard, and it's 44 inches wide. I'm not sure why the price is in between, but I guess it depends on how much you buy. The more you buy, maybe the price goes down. I imagine that's what it is. So that's even less expensive. So there you go, Joanne Fabric, Royalty 3 Velvet Fabric, recommended by Ray Coronado on the fly. All these links for this stuff we'll have posted at avrant.com in the show notes. So if you're looking for it, that's where it is.
All right, Bobby, hit us.
Bobby would like you, both of you, to list all of the equipment that you use in your own theaters. He's heard you mention bits and pieces, but not a full list all at once. Also,
you want me to go super fast or just post the list at avrant.com?
You can do that, I guess. Well, how fast can you read the list?
Oh, pretty fast. Pretty fast.
I don't know what projector I have up there.
All right. You figure out what you got. I'll go through my list super fast.
I'll be right back.
Yep.
You're watching the video. I'll be right back.
There you go. Okay, so I have Elite Home Theater seating. It's their Cinema C1M. I have it in a 3-seat sofa configuration, so only arms on the 2 outside sides. I have GIC acoustic room treatment, so I got 244 bass traps in the corners, 242 panels on the walls, and 1 monster bass trap on the back on a stand. I have Auralex Metro Fuser diffusion panels. I got 12 of those on my ceiling. I have Yorkville SKS 500B monitor stands, which are really nice because they get tall and they have clamps, so I have those for my height speakers. I have Quest EM400 speaker stands. Those are for my front wide speakers, which, front wides are basically a dead thing now. I noticed that all of the new Denon and Marantz models that are going to be coming out in October, November, they no longer support front wides, so I'm sad about that. I have Ormalex grandma risers to isolate my speakers. I have Ormalex mopads to isolate my surround speakers off of their stands. I have 2 APC J35 battery backups, uninterruptible power supplies. I also have 2 APC P8V surge protectors protecting my subwoofers, and those subwoofers are a pair of SVS PC13 Ultra cylinder subs, which are insane for my room, but I'm hoping to move them to a much bigger room at some point in the future. My television is a Sony XBR 65-inch X900A. It is technically a 4K TV. It is not HDR. It is not wide color gamut. I got it because it has passive 3D, and 3D is basically dead now too. So all my stuff is dying. I have that mounted on a Z-Line Jaguar 3-in-1 TV stand. I really like that stand. And now, of course, my speakers are Ascend Acoustics. I have custom front speakers. So I have what they call their low profile horizon. I actually have that in a vertical orientation. So call it a vertical horizon if you want to, with the RAL ribbon tweeter upgrades. I have a custom Horizon RAL center speaker, which is super skinny from front to back. It's only 7.5 inches deep, so that's going to fit nicely behind a acoustically transparent screen one day. I have some super custom Sierra bookshelf speakers. They actually have the same RAL ribbon tweeter and the same mid-range driver as those Horizon speakers. I got those to be my front wides. They're going to be my surrounds because front wides are dead. I have 6 Sierra 2s from Ascend Acoustics. Those are my surround, well, used to be surround backs, front heights, rear heights, so they're doing all my Atmos positions, all being powered by a Marantz SR7010 AV receiver and an ATI 1807 7-channel external amplifier. I have Sewell deadbolt banana plugs and spade lugs, generic RCA, HDMI, and speaker wire, all from justoncable.ca in Canada here, and then I have an Xbox One and a PS4 and a home theater PC that I built. That's all my stuff.
All right. Mine's going to be shorter than that.
Fast.
All right, so I got a Denon AVR X4000, which I bought, was it last year or year before? I don't remember. And pretty much, I've got a bunch of sources, but not many of them are hooked up. So I've got like the second, not the top of the line Denon. Is it on here? I think it's on here. Hold on a second. I'm actually looking at you can actually go to my page on Audioholics, my reference system, System 3, and it shows a lot of this stuff here. But let me see if I can find this stupid stuff. The Denon DVD 3910 is my universal DVD player that I use. I also have the RSP1, which is from Emotiva, and I have the RPA1 that no longer works, which is the amplifier. That's a 2-channel system. The amp does not work. For power, I've got the APC H15 is what it looks like, and I got some sort of Panamax thing down there, which is the battery backup. That's also on there if I can find it, which I cannot. It's gone. It's there. It's gone.
Tom knows his stuff like the back of his hand.
Well, these are the things I don't know. Okay, so the rest of it I know, but that's the stuff I don't know. So for the projector, I have this is a unit I got from Clint. It is a Optima HD, I think it's HDX or something. I don't know. What is the thing? I can't read it.
Just looked at it.
Well, you talk so long. It's HD 161X. It's like I don't know if it's business class or what. Nice little projector. It's fine. It's not anything to write home about. It's got a good picture, but it's something to write home about as far as feature wise and stuff like that. I have Xbox One, a PS3. The PS3 I use almost exclusively for movies. The Xbox One I use for all the streaming stuff. I have the Denon Universal Remote one, whatever was the one I have. The Harmony one. Is that what it is? The Harmony.
Yeah. I forgot to mention. Yeah, I've got a Harmony. Actually, it's the keyboard because I attached it to my home theater PC. So it's the Harmony hub with the Harmony keyboard. That's what I use in there.
So I have Appearing Audio Veris Grand speakers. I got the towers up front of the center, whatever the center channel is called, whatever it is, and the
Veris Grand Center.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah. And the bookshelves are actually my surround back speakers. On the walls, I have the discontinued Emotiva speakers, whatever they were called.
ERD1s.
Yeah, that's them. ERD1s for a screen. I've got a 92-inch silver ticket screen that I bought. It's the one that didn't go. And I have the smallest of the SVS tower. I mean cylinder speakers, cylinder subs. Excuse me, for my subwoofers. They are the 12 NSDs, right?
Yeah, the PC12 NSDs. Yeah,
so
which are now replaced by the PC2000s.
Yeah, and those are on those special little feet thingy that they have.
Yeah, I got those too. The SoundPath isolation feet. Yeah.
I do have a grandma like you have. My parents have it. That's the thing. I've got gear all over the place. So
Yeah.
like the headphones I'm using are the Oppo PM3s. I've got the PM2s that I also use. I've got some Alpine headphones that I use. I've got just a ton of different little in-ears and speakers that float around here. Creative has sent me 2 different portable speakers that I use. The BenQ one with the electrostatic panels.
Yeah.
I use that one all the time. I have so much gain. Now, the soundproofing in here, or the sound absorption is mostly from I guess it's just those tri-traps that I'm using. The ones back here were from another company called is it Chameleon or something like that? I can't remember.
Oh, could be. Yeah.
The name of this.
That's Real Traps, right? They make the Chameleon.
Real Traps, yeah.
Pretty sure it's them.
Yeah, but the GIK tri-traps are, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them in here. It looks like. I think that looks right. 4.
All right.
And a whole bunch of other panels are just kind of lying around. Like this panel that's behind me, this black panel, is brown, I think, because the room I had in them before was sort of brown. So I took speaker grill fabric and just wrapped it around there and tucked it in to the frame. It's not even attached. I could just
That'll do it.
So, that's about everything I can think of right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yet another part too, right, Austin?
Yes. So, with all of that you have, is there anything that you're planning to upgrade within the next year or so?
Well, I'd like to upgrade to an OLED, but I don't know if I'll ever have the money to do that. So, but that's about it. I'm done elsewhere.
Prices are coming down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could consider going to like when the SVS elevation speakers come out, I could see myself putting some up front maybe. But I could use those with my current receiver, but I would also consider going to Atmos or something for that.
There you go.
I'd be loath to get rid of my fan because it really does make a big difference. But since we got that Ecobee system, it's made it a lot more comfortable in this room because I have a sensor in here. And at night, it only during the evenings, which is when it really gets bad in here, because the AC won't kick on anymore, or because it never used to measure back here. Now the only ones that measures is this room and in the bedroom. My wife, my wife is
All right.
and that makes a big difference. So there you go. I guess that counts as stuff too. All right, next
up.
Will was using an Emotiva stereo amp and EMP Tech bookshelf speakers as his computer speakers, but it was a bit overkill. And he's rearranged his office, and there's no longer room for the speakers in the amp. He used to have a Klipsch Pro Media 2.1 system, but he doesn't have it anymore, although he could buy another one for about $150. He'd prefer a setup without a separate bass module. Any suggestions? Should you just buy the Klipsch that he already knows sound decent?
Well, not if you don't want a bass module, and it has a bass module.
Yeah,
so.
there you go. The audio engine speakers are all real good. Those are the kind of the go-to suggestion.
Yeah, I mean the A2, it's the A2 Plus.
And those
that's
are
their
small.
smaller model, and they're $250 for the pair, so it's more expensive than the Klipsch, but they sound great and they do what you want, which is play without a bass module and sound really good, which is what matters most.
Yeah. 150
Easy recommendation.
150 is hard to get to have anything decent.
Yeah,
I mean, if you really want to spend some, buy some stands. Some stands for $150. Buy some stands. Then you can use your stuff you got right now. But
He doesn't have them anymore. You'd have to buy them again.
What?
I
No,
don't
the
know.
Emotiva, you got rid of all that stuff.
Oh, the Emotivas, I see. Yeah,
Yeah, the EMP Tech
And the
bookshelf
EMP.
speaker. Yeah, just buy some stands.
but well, he's saying he
fine.
doesn't have room. He doesn't physically have space anymore, so it might be maybe there's not space for stands.
Baby just ruins everything. Telling you.
I'm saying Audio Engine A2s. I would recommend them to pretty much anybody. So
I've got those, and that's another thing I've got out there. I've got those, and they are very respectable little speakers.
Yeah.
That they put out. I mean, they're small. They're not gonna put out that much bass, but they put out enough bass that I'm not displeased with how.
I'd
they
venture
sound.
just as much as that bass module from the Klipsch. 'cause-
Oh,
Yeah.
it probably even sounds better than that. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, I
Yeah.
hate those things. They're
Yeah.
awful. Yeah. Go on. Next.
Nathan wonders, with all else being equal, is it better to place a receiver and separate amplifier close together and connect them with short RCA cables and then run 100 feet of speaker wire to the speakers, or place the amplifiers close to the speakers and run 100 feet of RCA cables?
The first one, the former. RCA cables are a low-level signal.
Yeah.
Now, if you have nicely shielded RCA cables, it's not going to be a tremendous problem, but they are far more susceptible to potentially picking up interference than speaker wire, which is carrying actually a fairly powerful signal. Like, compared to radio waves, electromagnetic interference, the signal power going through speaker wire has already been amplified. It is orders of magnitude more powerful than the low-level signals that could potentially interfere with the low-level signal going through an RCA cable. So, yeah, 100 feet of speaker wire, if it's 12 or 10 gauge speaker wire, really no problem at all. And it's also cheaper. So
That's
why not?
what it comes down to.
Yeah.
All things being equal, if you're buying well-made cables and just, everything, it really shouldn't make any difference. It shouldn't. But it just makes a lot more sense to run the speaker cable. I know I've heard this over and over again from audiophiles. They're like, you want the shortest possible path from the amplifier to the speaker.
Traveling at the speed of light, it couldn't care less.
186,000 miles per second is the speed of light. 186,000 miles. Light can go around our planet more than 7 times in 1 second, and you're worried about the amplifier being too far away from your speaker. Are you serious? Are you serious with me right now? Is that what we're serious about? And I'm not saying that Nathan's saying this. I'm saying that's
No.
I read this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just, it makes no sense at all.
No, I mean, a 100-foot-long RCA cable, even if it's decently shielded, but maybe not fantastic shielding, but, just a generic RCA, if it's 100 feet long, that's long enough. It could pick up some interference. That's really not out of the realm of possibility. Whereas a 100-foot speaker wire, the signal's too strong. It's really just not going to pick anything up.
You're not running 100 feet of anything. Let's just stop right there.
No, I mean, if it's going through multiple walls, from a downstairs to an upstairs or something, it's
Not
possible.
going 100 feet.
Sure, from one side of a house to another.
Cheaper and better is the speaker cable.
Yeah.
And all that other nonsense about worrying about this, how far away the amplifier is from the speaker. Ugh.
We've answered that one. Speaker wire longer, that's fine. That's the way to go.
And probably easier to work with than RCA.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Could be.
So as a follow-up to his questions last week, he gets that most people are fine with using the built-in amps in a receiver, but can we do a bit more of a deep dive into the consideration that go into determining if you really need an external amplifier and how to select one? And he has some specific categories as well.
Yeah.
We see this. In general, when you're looking at your receiver, first of all, how far away are you going to sit from your speakers, and what speakers are you
That's right.
using? That's what it comes down to. It really doesn't come down to the amplifier. It comes down to the speakers, because your receiver is probably fine for powering most. First of all, it can power any speaker. It just maybe can't get very loud before it blows up.
It's a question of how loud.
Yeah. So if you've got clipped speakers and you're sitting 10 feet away from them, you could plug them into your clock radio, and you could have your neighbors complaining that it's too loud. Okay, that's just the raw facts of how those speakers work. They're very efficient. They are very stable. They're 8 ohm speakers, very easy to drive, and they're extremely sensitive, and they have that horn loaded.
On the other hand, you've got some big old magnapans that dip down to 1.2 ohms at certain points.
Then you need a big beefy amp, no matter how. I mean, technically, if you set them up on either side of your folding chair and use them as headphones, you could power them with just about anything.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have to be very loud. But
so really what I tend to look for, I look at the speakers. The speakers tell me, and how far away I'm sitting from them. Those tell me whether or not I should consider having an external amp. And I'm going to look at their sensitivity rating, and I'm going to look at their nominal impedance. Because if they have a very low impedance, it's helpful if you can see an impedance graph. Like some of those magnapans, you're not going to see it from the nominal impedance.
No,
they're rated at 4 ohms.
4 ohms, so they don't tell you that it dips down to 1.2.
That's right. But if you see the impedance graph of when it was measured at some of those base frequencies, it's dipping way down. So if you're right away, if you're seeing something like that, if you're seeing in the impedance graph that you're dipping below, what is the THX threshold? 3.2 ohms, right? Now, pretty much any receiver will power a speaker that's 3.2 ohms at some point, but if you're getting below that at some point, right away I'd be like, I would consider an external amp. Might not have to have a ton of wattage if you're sitting close to it, but might not be a bad idea to consider one if you have super low impedance anywhere. Now, that aside, I look at the sensitivity. And what you can sort of do, like most speakers are like 86 dB with 1 watt of power or 2.83 volts into an 8 ohm load from 1 meter away. And basically I go, well, how far away am I sitting? Every time you double the distance, if you were outside with no walls around you, you'd subtract 6 decibels every time you double the distance. But you're not outside. You do have walls around you. You're actually losing more like 3, maybe 4 at the most. So I usually subtract like 3 or 4 decibels every time I double the distance from 1 meter. So if I'm sitting a little over 6 feet away, I'd subtract 3 or 4 dB from that sensitivity figure. If I'm sitting 12 feet away, I'll subtract maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 dB from that original sensitivity figure. And from there, you go, well, now let's say I've subtracted 6 dB and I'm at 80. So with 1 watt of power, I get 80 decibels of output, and I want to hit full reference volume. I want to hit 105 dB. So if I want to go up 10 decibels, I need 10 times the wattage. So to get to 90 dB in this hypothetical scenario, I need 10 watts. To get to 100 dB, I need 100 watts. Then every time you double the power, you get 3 more dB. So I'm going to double it to 200. That gets me 103. Let's just go for broke. I'll double it again, 400 watts to get to 105. But that's a peak. That's a momentary peak. That's all 105 dB would be full reference volume. So I could say, all right, I basically want something that can give me 100 watts all day long, 100 watts RMS, so that I can basically hit 100 dB. And then for those extra 5 or 6 dB peaks, it should be able to peak up to 400 watts, which if it can deliver 100 watts RMS all day long, it can. That's just kind of baked into it. So, that's how I would look at it. And I would go, okay, my AV receiver says it can do 120 watts per channel, but they'll all almost say that's only 2 channels driven at the same time, which is probably fine. Yeah. It's probably fine. So this is the reason. Right here, I just worked out the math in front of you in my voice, and you can see why for the vast majority of people with normal speakers that are like 86 dB efficient, and you're sitting probably 12, 15 feet away from it, that if you have a normal AV receiver that can deliver somewhere around 100 watts of power per channel, you don't need an external amp. But if you have super inefficient speakers that are like 79 dB to begin with, or they dip down to 1.2 ohms, then you're going to want to look at it. Or if you sit really far away, you're sitting 22 feet away or something like that, then suddenly things change. So that's the deep dive.
Yeah. So for some specific considerations, watts per channel is too much amp power something to be concerned about? For example, is connecting a high-efficiency speaker in a small room to a very large monoblock amp an inherently bad idea? Or is it fine as long as you don't crank the volume?
It's fine.
Yep.
It's fine.
Yeah,
the amp literally does not care. We've talked about this before, but think of it like a gas tank. Do you think, like if you got an itty-bitty gas tank on a very large car, they'll go very far. You take a huge tanker of gas and you run a pipe from it to the gas, the gas can or whatever of a Prius. Do you think the Prius is going to go, I can't take that much gas? It's going to go, no, I only need a little bit. Can you give me a little bit? And the tanker's like, I'll give you whatever you want, man. I'm good. Yeah. I just got a lot of gas here. Whenever you want some, I got it. I got your back.
Yeah.
That's basically it. So
now,
you're, in your example, the Prius is the high-efficiency speaker, and the amplifier is just sitting there basically doing jack squat most of the time, not even noticing that some power is being taken from it because it's got so much reserve.
I mean, it is theoretically possible to jack the volume so high, and that's changing the voltage, and the voltage is telling you the difference in potential from one side to the other. It's possible to jack that up so high and have a huge, beefy amplifier that it's saying, I should be throwing a ton of power through this speaker, and the speaker goes, I can't handle that much power, and it starts to melt. The voice coil will literally overheat and melt. That is possible, but like you said, as long as you don't crank the volume that high, the amplifier is not the problem. It's not gonna demand that it push that much power through the speaker. The power is drawn through by the potential difference, which is the voltage of the signal. So it is possible to melt a voice coil by having too much amplifier power, but that will be a user error. That will be on you for having cranked the volume too high. It does not have to happen.
You should also have your ears checked while you're having this problem, because you are clearly a deaf person who is trying to hear something they are physically incapable of hearing.
Yeah.
So consider that as well.
All right. I like this next one.
Slew rate. What is it? And does it matter?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everything matters.
We'll have a link to a great Audioholics article that describes this exactly what it is. So we'll have the link for that at AV Rant.
It is basically, according to this article, I'm going to read it from the article. Sure. It is the rate of how quickly an amplifier can respond to a rapid change of input level.
Mm-hmm.
So this is measured as a change in voltage with respect to time. It can be seen in the main image of this article, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's an article here where it shows the input changing like in a stair step.
Mm-hmm.
Not stair step, but like little blocks or whatever, square, like straight up and then over and then down. And then the output underneath it is the amplifier trying to do that. And instead of having squares, it's having pyramids, because it's taking time to get up to that level, that peak that's trying to get to. And then when it senses that it's supposed to go down, it's actually going longer. It's taking longer to go down than it should.
So basically, the higher the frequency that's playing and the greater the amplitude of that high frequency, the faster the slew rate you need. It's how fast can the amplifier respond to the signal being sent to it, and it's measured in volts per microsecond. Now, basically, we don't have to care too much about the amplifier going above 20 kilohertz, or at least we shouldn't. Some people do. Now, most amplifiers will go all the way up to like 100 kilohertz if you want them to. But more or less, if you needed it to go to up to 20 kilohertz, and you needed it to hit like pretty much the loudest peak that any speaker could possibly sustain. We just talked about that. The voltage going through that speaker is saying the potential difference, and then that is drawing power from the amplifier. You'd need about, 6.3, 6.9 volts per microsecond. That would basically get you there. Whereas more or less every amplifier you'll see will see like 40, 50 volts per microsecond. That's like kind of. I've seen some that are like 20 volts per microsecond. All of them exceed what you could ever possibly need in a home setting. So it's almost something you don't have to worry about. It's possible to make an amplifier that wouldn't have a sufficient slew rate to get you 20 kilohertz at full volume that you want to hit. But it's so rare that it's a spec that it's not even listed on a lot of stuff, because it's at this point, it's effectively not a problem for any of them.
So you may have heard this in reference to an audiophile amplifier. Well,
sure.
They'll talk about it, and the reason they'll talk about it because they know no one else is talking about it,
yeah.
And it makes them stand out. This happens all the time. They're talking about skin effects,
or it's for the people who actually think that they're listening to like 192 kilohertz sampled content, and that they can actually hear like 96 kilohertz, because they, in their magical brain, they think they can do that.
Right. And so these companies, they latch onto something like slew rate, or cryogenically freezing crap, or skin effect, or braided versus solid cores, or something, the dielectric, whatever the insulator is, or whatever. They'll latch onto something and say, we really care about this one thing, and then this is why you should care about it, and no one else is talking about it because they can't do it as well as we can, and therefore everybody else is going, you're literally just making stuff up right now. You realize that, right? Everything you just said makes no sense. And that's what they'll do. And this is probably what you've heard. You've heard somebody talk about slew rate and how their slew rate is the best. And it probably is. And it's like saying, it's like people around here where I live, when they buy like Maseratis, and they're like, oh, I've got a car that can go 180 miles an hour. I'm like, dude, we're both going 35. Like now, we're both going 35. And if you wanted to go to 180, you could do it for about 25 feet, because that's what you got before you're going to hit that car in front of you. There's no point.
If the slew rate is listed and it's anywhere above 10 volts per microsecond, you're basically fine, and they all will be. So,
Go on.
So really, it doesn't matter.
No.
Well, theoretically it can, but ultimately in practice,
practically.
No.
Yeah. Class A versus Class AB versus Class D amps. Is Class A really the best and Class AB always a compromise? And why do Class D amps get so much hate and yet are used in almost all subwoofers?
All right, so
yes.
the different amplifiers came about in basically to save power, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, what they're trying to do, what they're amplifying is the signal, right? They get a signal and they amplify it, all right? So Class A, I should have looked this all up beforehand. I'm sure Rob's going to correct me if I get it wrong. But Class A is the least efficient, whereas something like 25% of the power that it's putting out is going into the actual speaker.
Maybe, if you're lucky.
All the rest of it's getting used as or wasted as heat. So they get very, very hot. So this was always a problem. This is a real big problem when you're trying to build something like a receiver where you have all sorts of other components in there that are, kind of sensitive to heat and don't want to be cooked. And so they had to come up with something better. So they started working with Class AB, where, God, I should have looked this up beforehand. But the Class A, it amplifies both sides of the signal,
if
right?
You're thinking about a sine wave signal, there's a crest and a trough, a crest and a trough, a crest and a trough. So if you draw a line across that bisects that, so that you see the hill goes up, then it hits the line, then the line goes down, curve goes down, comes back up to the line, goes above the line, down below the line. So there's these two halves of the sine wave signal you consider. So basically both sides of that have to be amplified. That's the voltage going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in opposite directions, bidirectional signals. So Class A is sending full power to both sides of that signal all the time, constantly, whether there's a signal there to amplify or not.
Nope. Yep.
There could be nothing there. It's still sending all the power from the mains through the voltage rails, saying, if there's a signal here, I'm going to amplify it. And
I'm ready.
It's the most linear. It's the most constant, and that's true. It's the most linear and the most constant, but it's also hugely inefficient. Class B, all by itself, it amplifies one side and completely turns off the other side. Then when the trough comes, it turns on that side and completely turns off the peak side. So it doubles the efficiency. You're only ever amplifying the side that actually has a signal present. But there's this moment where it crosses over from one side to the other.
That's right.
So pure Class B can result in some audible little clicks and pops and stuff because the power supply can't switch as fast as the signal. There's a little bit of a delay in there. So Class AB is this combination where most of the time, if there's no signal there, it's turning off that side of the amplifier. But for the little area where it transitions, for a moment there, it turns into Class A. For a moment there, it's powering both sides to say, I'm going to give you this little bit of time while there's this transition between the trough side and the peak side, where it's going to be powering both sides. So it's about 50% efficient, maybe 60 or 70 if it's really well done. But that's what you're looking at with a Class AB.
Right, so you're only losing half of your power into heat.
That's right.
Which is kind of a lot better, and that's why
it is a lot better.
It tends to be a fairly linear amplifier as well.
Oh, yes.
At least it is now. When they, like anything else, when they first came out, the Class A was clearly better. Now it's sort of not really.
Now Class D is
what we call a switching amp, and a switching amp is way more efficient. Like upwards of 75-85% efficient.
Yeah, some of them even get up towards 90.
And we're talking you're only losing 10 to 15 to 20% to heat. That means that amplifier can be very, very small. It can and it can have a ton of power because it is not having to lose a bunch of stuff to heat, and it doesn't have to have these huge heat sinks to dissipate this heat. So why are they using all subwoofers? Because they're not putting off a bunch of heat. They're very small. You can attach them right there, and they're great. One of the problems traditionally for switching amps is that they're not linear at the higher frequencies, they're less linear at higher frequencies. So that's been one of the. But guess what? You know what subwoofers don't do? Higher frequencies. So they're like, this is great. We'll shove them in here. We don't care that they're not linear above 500 hertz or whatever it is. They're only doing from 120 and down, and they're perfectly linear there. So that's why they use them inside subs so much. And
they're great for that application.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And then we came out with the ICE amps from Bang & Olufsen. Bang & Olufsen developed these ICE amps, which were much more linear across the entire frequency range, because what they wanted was self-powered speakers that you could just plug in. And they are a design-driven company. So one of the designers said, this is a speaker. It's a ball.
Yep.
And we got to put everything in there. And they're like, we can't put everything in there. There's too much heat. Like, well, use a Class D amp. They're like, it's not linear. They're like, well, fix it. And that's what they did. And they started selling those ICE amps OEM, basically. So there's a bunch of manufacturers out there who will say, we are utilizing ICE amp technology, but we have modified it so that it is better because reasons.
Yeah, so instead of the voltage going through, like in a Class B amplifier, you can switch off either side, but the amount of voltage going through those rails it's either on or off. It's the same amount, every time. Whereas Class D, they can vary how much voltage is going through those rails and only send as much as the signal requires. So a louder signal needs to draw more power. It can switch to a higher voltage rail. But if you're sending a very low amplitude signal, it can switch down to a much lower voltage rail and save you a lot of power. And then it's only amplifying one side at a time. So it's much, much more efficient. But again, you're talking about all these switches, and the electronics can't necessarily switch as fast as the frequency, especially at very high frequencies. So that's why Class D amplifiers tend to be less linear the higher in frequency you go, because they're rapidly trying to switch. They're like, which voltage rail should I go on now? And it's doing like 20,000 times a second. It gets tough. Where the ICE amps came in is they just started switching them way faster. They started switching them at like 100 kilohertz. So they're like, well, we can switch it like crazy, filter out any noise that's generated, and still get you up to like 20 kilohertz without you hearing noise anymore. But it's more expensive. You have to put the filters in, so that's what happens. That's it.
So I think the end, this kind of summary of that is like, which one's the best? They're all potentially the best.
Yeah.
They're all potentially the best.
Application dependent.
And also, I mean, if you want to spend, $20,000 on an amplifier, they'll all be fantastic, and they could be Class D, or they'll probably call it something else, Class H or K or something like that.
Well, yeah,
there's a bunch of them out there.
Those other weird ones like Class G and Class H, they're basically taking a switching power supply and then attaching it to a Class A or a Class B or a Class AB amplifier. So the circuitry that's actually doing the amplification of the signal, it's like Class A or Class AB, but then the power supply behind it is switching. So that gets you like a Class H or a Class G. It's kind of a hybrid between the two things. Yeah.
All right, go on.
Balanced versus unbalanced connections. With short cable runs, unbalanced is fine, right?
Yes. It's also fine with long runs if you have a well-shielded cable.
We were just talking about that. This RCA thing, you're going to go 100 feet. I mean, if you have to, you have to.
Yep.
As long as you got a good cable, you'll be fine. As long as it's well shielded, you'll be fine.
Yeah, what a balanced signal does is it takes the original, because the original signal is not two signals, it's one signal going up and down, up and down. It duplicates it and then inverts one side. So now you have two of the same signal, but one is inverted, and those both go down the cable. Then at the other end, one side is inverted and put back, recombined with its twin. And what happened is, if you picked up any interference along the way, you picked up that interference in both of those sides, but one side was inverted. So when you invert it back, now the noise that was picked up on both sides, one of those sides is inverted and it cancels it out. So you cancel out the noise that got picked up in the cable. That's the advantage of a balanced signal. But if you shield the noise to begin with so that it doesn't get into the cable in the first place, really not a problem. That's how you fix an unbalanced signal. So that's it.
Yeah.
And finally, beyond measurable specs are notions of certain amps sounding warm, punchy, laid back, etc. Nothing but nonsense.
Yes.
Very often. Yeah. Very, very often.
I mean, when you say beyond measurable specs, what I assume you mean is beyond amplifiers not behaving the way they should, or a poorly designed amplifier. Aside from that, should they all sound the same? Yes. They should all sound exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there can be instances where given a certain impedance load, 1 amp will, it will actually deliver the amount of power being called for by the signal, and another amp will fail to do so. Right? But that's talking about exceeding the capabilities of one of those amplifiers. And anytime you exceed the capability of an amplifier, you drive it into clipping, or you drive it into a state where it's not able to deliver the full power, or you ask it to amplify a signal that it simply can't amplify because it's way too high a frequency or something like that, you can get a problem where 1 amp will sound different from another, but that is exceeding the capability of one. So as long as the amplifiers are within their capabilities and they measure linearly, because there are amps that aren't linear, there are amps that like amplify some frequencies to a greater extent than other frequencies by design, even. Or you could do that with digital signal processing, saying, these frequencies, accentuate them, do it even more. Okay, that's going to sound different, but for obvious reasons. So he's saying if you got two that measure linearly, as long as they're both within their capabilities, they do sound the same. So, yeah, well, the rest is nonsense.
New for this week.
Oh, my goodness. Only an hour and 20 minutes of this podcast.
Well, it was 6 questions, so. Christopher. On a previous show, we discussed Robert G. mounting his speakers upside down, suggesting that if he did, he should invert the tweeter.
Now, I want to correct that, because I don't believe we said to remove the tweeter and turn it 180 degrees. We just said turn the whole speaker upside down.
Yeah, that's what he meant, I think.
So I think there was just, I'm not blaming Christopher on this. It was just a little bit of confusion.
Yeah.
Maybe we said something along those lines. It didn't mean to.
We were suggesting, flipping the speaker because the
whole speaker.
The speaker was very near the ceiling.
That's right.
Okay, so the idea here is that there's going to be a bounce of the sound off the ceiling by the tweeter and then back down. And he was having some problems with the surrounds not sounding the way that he wanted them to. By inverting them, we are getting the tweeter further away from that boundary there, and then hopefully that bounce will happen. I mean, it's going to happen no matter what. It's going to happen, but it'll happen, and then it won't get to the ears. So it's like bounce like behind him somehow. At least that's sort of the idea. On top of that, you've now got a woofer below it, which is putting out sound, which is going to interfere with the sound from the tweeter going. It would be down normally, but up in this case, and therefore creates a bit of a sonic barrier for the tweeter sounds as they're coming out, so that it will hopefully help as intelligibility.
Yeah, so the idea, we were saying invert the entire speaker. We weren't saying just to invert the tweeter. So just to clarify that, and then I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, because it should be the same either. It's not like if you take a speaker and turn it on its side, you should reorient the tweeter, because
it
won't be the same vertically and horizontally.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, vertical should be vertical. So does the second half of this actually even matter then?
That doesn't. Keep going. B.
Okay. No. Should all elevated speakers be inverted? For example, his front left and right speakers are slightly above ear level and tilted down a little bit to aim at his seating, and his surrounds are mounted above ear level, which is something that we've recommended, and also angled down toward the seats. Should he invert all of those speakers so that the tweeters are at the bottom rather than the top?
No.
It's, I mean, if they're so high that they're very close to the ceiling, that's the case where it might help. But if you're talking about they're 2 feet above your ears, they're still, 3 feet away from your ceiling, right? Assuming when you're seated, it's about 3 feet high, and then they're 2 feet above that, so about 5 feet high, and then your ceiling's 8 feet high, which is very common. Then you've got 3 feet still between the top of that speaker and the ceiling, which is not so close that, you're worrying about trying to get distance from the ceiling. So what we were talking about was when the speaker is so close to the ceiling that the bounce from the tweeter is going to come off of that ceiling and be very audible. That's where getting any distance that you can, and one easy way is to simply turn the speaker upside down. That's where it's beneficial. But what he's talking about, the tilting is enough. You don't have to.
Yeah, and I would suggest that you don't need to tilt your surround speakers at all. I mean, the whole idea of your surround speaker is supposed to be a more generalized sound. It's supposed to be more diffuse. That's why we have dipole speakers that sit back there, or even bipoles. But so I don't even think that like mine are not tilted. Mine are high. They're probably a foot off it's on the ceiling, but they're probably a foot off of the whatever that thing is, the air duct there.
Soft.
And I didn't tilt them. I didn't turn them upside down. I wouldn't have worked because they're rounded, but I didn't even think to turn them upside down to get the tweeter closer to my ear. I didn't aim them towards me, they're supposed to be more diffused. I wouldn't even tilt surround speakers if they're just a little bit elevated for sure.
Yeah.
Your fronts maybe, but definitely not the backs or the surrounds.
No. It's the proximity to the ceiling is what we're worried about.
Yeah.
All right.
Next.
Ryan first wants to address the confusion over having his front row of seats on a low 6-inch riser. He says in his previous house he had the theater in a basement with the seats directly on the concrete, and he found the tactile feedback to be lacking. While in his current house, all the equipment is in the living room until the theater gets built, and the floors are hardwood. He has much more vibration and tactile feedback than in the previous basement, and he attributes it to the wood floors, and the riser is an attempt to replicate that effect in the basement.
All right.
He wants a shaking platform.
That's fine. This will work probably better than you think it will. Let's go with that. I have been on platforms like this. I don't like it. It shakes too much. It shakes a lot.
But he does like it, and some people agree with him.
That's
and that's fine.
That's fine. But I want you to be I want you to be prepared for this. So before you finish off your riser, because I imagine you're going to finish it in some way, like carpet or something.
Carpet it, yeah.
Yeah. Before you do that, make sure that you like this effect.
Yeah.
Okay, and be prepared to overbuild this thing so that because it's not a floor. It does not have all the stuff on top of it that is connecting it to everything else. It is much more mobile than your hardwood floor is, which means that this thing's going to shake like a drum at times.
Also, be prepared for some certain frequencies to shake that platform a lot more than others.
Than other ones. That's right, because it's never resonant frequency.
Will.
Be prepared to, number one, overbuild it so it is super duper strong, so that it will shake but not like bounce around. 2, be prepared to buy a ridiculous amount of insulation to shove inside this thing, because that's probably what we're going to tell you to do. Shove insulation, the same sort of stuff that you would use for your absorptive panels,
fiberglass or rock wool.
You're going to shove that in this thing and fill up every available crevice with it. We want this thing to be, at the very least, we don't want it to be bouncing around like crazy. Even if you're going to attach it to the ground, like with concrete screws and the whole 9 yards, you're gonna want to make sure this thing is super rock steady, because it will. It really is. It is surprising how much these things can shake.
All right.
Second, he's definitely down with the 5-channel amp idea, and is curious about the Outlaw Model 5000 versus the Emotiva A500. The Outlaw is an extra $100. Is it actually better and worth the extra money?
We haven't heard the Emotiva, the new one yet, the A500. I'm just going by the specs, and the Emotiva specs are a little bit better than the Outlaw. Now, remember, we're talking about the Outlaw Model 5000, which is not made by ATI for them.
Right.
They outsourced that to a different... I don't know what company is building that Model 5000, but it is not ATI, and its specs are not quite as pristine as ATI's amps, nor, in this case, Emotiva's new A500. So just purely going by the specs, the Emotiva looks a little bit better, especially since it's $100 cheaper. And look, Emotiva and Outlaw, they classically battle it out. They're like, I can make a cheaper, better amp than you, and so it's good. I like that competition. It means we get a less expensive, better performing amp. So, I see no reason to spend the extra $100 in this particular case.
If you really want to, you can, I suppose.
If you just like the Outlaw logo better.
That's... You're like, I'm an outlaw. They're outlaws. We're outlaws. Okay. Here's $100. There you go.
Yep.
Next.
Bill the Stumper thanks us for discussing his theater build. He's very keen on the forthcoming Denon AVR X6300H that we mentioned, especially at its expected $2,300 price point.
Yep.
He expects to complete the build of his theater in the October-November time frame, so the timing should work out nicely.
Yeah.
As a reminder, his theater will be a dedicated, sealed 13 by 19 by 8.5 foot room, acoustically treated, with a sectional couch and bar stools behind the couch as sort of a second row. So, after we suggested focal for in-wall and in-ceiling speakers to match his Ascend Sierra RAL front speakers, He looked at Focal's lineup and decided he might prefer to use their on-wall models instead. This would avoid the need to put sizable holes in his walls and ceiling, and he wouldn't have to worry about backer boxes. So he was leaning towards the Super Birds as surrounds and surround backs, and the Birds as overhead Atmos speakers on the ceiling. What do we think of this? Pluses, minuses?
I like it.
I'm good with this. This is a great idea.
I like this a lot. I like not having the larger holes in your drywall. I really like using the Birds as overhead speakers. I think they're great for that application. If you have a really low ceiling, that would be the only time I might, because they do have some depth. I think they're over 6 inches once you consider the body of the speaker plus its little sort of 3-footed thing.
Oh yeah, they look tiny in the pictures.
They look tiny, but they're not as tiny as you might think, because that's a 5.5-inch driver in there.
Oh yeah, so the little Bird is.
Yeah, there's a little Bird. Yeah.
That's even smaller. That would be good for Atmos too. I would imagine.
Yeah, it could be, but I like. But I mean, he doesn't have that problem. He's got 8.5 feet of ceiling.
8.5 foot, yeah.
So they would be great there. The Super Birds, I don't even know if they're really necessary over the Birds. They're actually the same. They just add a passive radiator. That's really what it is. It's not 2 active drivers. It's 1 active driver plus a passive radiator, but they sit more flush on the wall.
That's what I liked about them. They are
so as
super
surrounds,
flush.
they sit nice and flush on the wall. So I am all in favor of this, to be honest. I think that's a great way to go.
I like these as all the way around, like the ceiling speakers
be,
and everything, because they're the Super Birds are very flush.
Yeah.
I looked at them and went, whoa, I did not know those were that cool. I mean, that was literally my reaction.
They sound good too, so yeah. Right on.
Yes, good.
So he's having a hard time deciding on a projector. He's considering Sony, JVC, or Epson.
Mm-hmm.
Sony is the only one offering true 4K panels, but he'd be looking at their VPL VW365ES, which he could get for about $9,000.
Woo!
It was announced it would get a firmware update to make it compatible with HDR10, but what about its color gamut? And is its native 4K resolution really that big of a deal?
Right, so when the VW365 came out, it was not HDR compatible. It was not wide color gamut compatible. They're gonna, give it a firmware update to make it compatible. Compatible is not the same thing as capable.
That's right.
So it's not a super bright projector. It's not dim by any means, but it's not super duper bright. So depending on your screen size, it might get you to 100 nits or not. But realize that it's topping out at about 900 lumens in the real world, which is pretty darn bright. Make no mistake about that. That's pretty darn bright, but it's not going to get you to like a 150-inch screen or something like that. So there's just that. And as far as its color gamut goes now, technically, it's a wide color gamut display because it goes beyond 709, but just a little bit. Just a teeny weeny bit, which is
for
enough to be able to...
$9,000, I would think I would want something a little bit more than this.
Yeah, so I can't wholly back that one. In my opinion, in projectors, it's tougher. If you got a huge image, the actual 4K resolution potentially becomes visible. We can't say this is like a flat panel from 10 feet away, but for the price,
$9,000, I don't know.
It's I wouldn't wholeheartedly.
If it were me, I'd be looking for a really nice 1080p right now.
Sure.
And
especially one of these ones that can wobble its panel and give you the pseudo 4K.
Yeah, I'd sit on it for a couple of years.
Yeah. Austin?
Well, I was trying to. Did you cover the JVC and Epson?
Oh well, yeah. So he was thinking like the X550R, which is their least expensive. That's a $4,000 one, HDR10 compatible with a wide color gamut, and then it has these 1080p panels that it's wobbling. Now the X550R, like I say, technically compatible with wide color gamut, but again, not really. It's just barely going beyond 709. If you can step up to the X750R, and the X750R is still less expensive than the Sony, so if the Sony was within reach, then the X750R definitely is. That one actually introduces a filter that gets you to the proper wide color gamut. It gets you very close to DCI P3 color gamut. So if we're worrying about the expanded color, if we're worrying about the very best black levels in contrast, the JVCs win. The JVCs still win in the black level and contrast departments, even over these Sonys. So I am pretty darn bullish on that X750R. I think that's a really, really nice choice for a projector.
Was it going to be like $5,000 though? I mean...
Oh, it's $6,000-7,000.
Yeah.
It's an expensive projector, but if he was considering $9,000, I would actually, in performance, I would take the X750R over the Sony, and then it's also $2,000 or $3,000 cheaper. So how do you beat that?
Yeah. What about the Epson, the 5040 UB? He was looking at that one
Yeah,
too.
so I mean that one, it's still using a dynamic iris. It's not going to have the same black levels and contrast as the JVC. It's 1080p panels wobbling. It does have a filter to bring it to DCI-P3, and it's only $3,000 retail. Probably going to hit $2,500 fairly quickly, like all the previous models in that line. So definitely, in terms of cost versus performance, this is probably going to be the champion. But he's going like fully dedicated, completely blacked out room, no light whatsoever. I'm like, you will actually benefit from the JVC. And if the money is there, then I can't say you're getting nothing by going to X750. You're getting something.
Yeah, if he's going with a completely
it's a lot of
blacked out
money.
room too, he should not be looking at a screen that has any gain on it.
No. 1.0 gain screen.
1.0. That's what he should be.
So, you're getting something, but you have to wonder about, now he's wondering about, of course, the LS10000 from Epson. That one does not do HDR at all. It's completely capable of doing wide color gamut. As long as your screen size isn't insane, it's capable of doing HDR. It just doesn't have the HDMI 2.0A ports. Doesn't have the stupid hardware ports on it. So assuming there will be a new model to replace the LS10000, which probably won't do anything other than give it HDMI 2.0A ports, assuming that is coming, that would definitely be in contention, because that's a laser light engine too. Kind of cool. So that would be in contention, but we haven't heard officially that a replacement is coming yet. So maybe just wait, because you're waiting till October, November anyway. That's going to be, CEDIA will have come and gone by then.
Yeah.
So we should have heard from Epson if there's going to be a new model replacing the LS10000, and that very well might become the front runner.
Okay.
Moving on to subwoofers. In his
Yeah.
previous house, his theater area was open to the rest of the house. So he bought an SVS PB13 Ultra at the time.
Good choice.
Clearly that model is overkill for the new room, though. What do we think he should do? Keep the PB13 Ultra and just add a PB2000? Sell the PB13 Ultra and buy two PB2000s? He'd probably prefer the traditional box shape, but do we have any reasons that might sway him towards a cylinder?
Well, it takes up less floor space.
There's that. Yeah. There's nothing that says that you cannot use the Ultra in this room. Okay, let's just start with that.
Yeah.
There is no reason why you can't. It's not like it's too big. I mean, it is too big, but it's not like gonna suddenly blow the doors off here. You're gonna turn it to the correct volume, and it's gonna be fine. That being said, I mean, you can sell that thing and probably buy the two PB2000s outright. You know what I mean? It's going to be
pretty close to it, yeah.
It's going to be very close. You're going to save yourself a bunch of money by doing that.
Yeah, and you're not getting like a big performance benefit by keeping the PB13 Ultra and adding a PB2000 to it. Like, that's not going to sound better than dual PB2000s, right? So
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you can sell that PB13 Ultra, and you darn well can, because people are certainly looking for PB13 Ultras, that aren't quite full retail price, so you can probably sell it for quite a bit and get dual PB2000s for almost even money. So
yeah, and the real benefit to getting the cylinder, as Rob said, is the floor space that you save.
Yeah, and you might actually be able to use that in your room.
Yeah.
You don't have a ton of space going on, and this is probably going to go in diagonally opposite corners if we have anything to say about it.
Right.
And so the cylinders will sit nicely in those corners and not take up a ton of space.
I would highly recommend going towards a cylinder just for the added floor space. I love subs that go up and not out. And PBs, any of the ported boxes, go out. They're just big. They will not be as big Ultra, but it will still be big. And you're going to have two of them.
And plus, with the PC 2000s, they come with the isolation feet already attached, so you don't even have to add a decoupling device. They're already there. So there you go.
I mean, I don't know why you're afraid. I mean, and the new ones, they have the wood thing on top. You could put a plant on them.
Yeah.
Your wife will even like them. You're like, oh, they're decorative, functional stands for plants and drinks and stuff.
All right. Next part.
And looking at his diagram, do we have any suggestions for where to put his equipment rack and dual subs? If it helps, the couch does not have to have the Chase Lounge section.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this thing now. All right.
Now, okay, so what we're looking at is just a rectangle. He's got his screen on what in our image is the left side. Then he's got his couch sort of in the middle, and then the bar stools behind that. And then he has proposed putting the AV rack in what would be the rear right corner of the room, seemingly inside a closet so that he can close it off and have no light, no display lights blinking or anything like that. Now, he's got his door.
Black hole theater is what this is going to be called.
Yeah, he's got his door in the rear left corner, so you can't put a sub there. Rear left corner is out because that's where the door is. So diagonally opposite corners would give us the front left corner and the rear right corner, which of course is where he's proposed putting his AV rack. I'm thinking put the AV rack in the front right corner. You could still put it behind a door so that you don't see any of the blinky lights, and then put your subs in the front left corner and the rear right corner, and to me that would work.
Is he going to have space?
Looks like he
Or a
should be
screen?
able to.
I can't really see a screen.
Yeah, I mean, his screen is not, he's not going for huge, so it's only going from here to here if you're looking at the YouTube video.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think
I
that
don't
would
know.
work.
I don't know.
I mean, a rack isn't huge. A rack is only 18 inches wide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think move your rack to the front right corner, put your subs in the front left and the rear right.
I'm seeing this. So he's got like this L-shaped sectional thing, and it's going to be against the wall, like the right wall of the theater.
Yeah.
I can't tell what that thing is right there. Ottoman? Oh, ottoman.
Yeah.
He's got chairs behind it, and then there's this thing. Yeah, I mean, it could work, I suppose.
Because otherwise, the sub either has to go beside the bar or somewhere along the back wall, and that's starting to block your ways to get to those bar stools if you do that. So I'm like, use the corners.
I mean, I think what you could do as well, no, because the subs are going to be in the way. You can't do left-right walls because the couch is too big.
Yeah, and he's saying it doesn't have to be a chaise lounge, but it's
I was
couch,
thinking the same thing, but you could put it like underneath what I don't know what
but
that.
you'd be blocking the only walkway on the left-hand side.
Yeah,
though,
that's
if you
the
put
thing.
it on the sidewall. So
you can put it on the sidewall.
yeah, no. So to me, you use that front right corner for something. That's where your AV rack could go.
It could put the front left corner. This is one of those situations. I mean, I think one of the advantages to putting in the back that he's thinking of is that you can run the HDMI cable to your projector really easily. That's nice.
Still not that hard if you're constructing the room to go from.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, there you go then.
Andrew on Facebook.
Either corner. You know what I'm saying? Either front corner. Or maybe just buy a piece of furniture and like use it as a
put all the equipment below the screen.
Below the screen.
That's another way.
That's kind of what I would do, to be honest with you. That would make everything easier.
That's how I used to have mine.
He wants no blinky lights. No blinky lights.
Electrical tape is cheap, buddy. It's cheap. Electrical tape is cheap. Go on.
All right.
Andrew on Facebook has dual SVS Model 1646 passive subwoofers powered by a Crown XLS. I know they're old.
I have not heard those in forever. I remember looking at those. So they're 16.
They're cylinders?
They're cylinders. They're 16 diameter and 46 tall, right?
That's
is that
right.
how that works?
That's correct.
So they have like a 15-inch driver in them, I'm guessing is what it is?
No, they were like a 12-inch driver because they always
okay.
had 12 inches back then.
Right.
Yeah, they're passive though, so external amplifier.
Yes, this was an option back in the day. You could buy their cylinders without amps in them.
That's right.
And then power, and they would sell you an amp too.
No, they sure would.
Or you could buy your own, provide your own. And this is long before SVS. These are probably pretty expensive too, to be honest with you. Back in the day. Go on.
Okay, yeah.
So they are passive. So he has them powered by a Crown XLS 1000 amp, and which is being fed by a Denon AVRX 1000. The Denon only has a single sub output. And so given this, how is he supposed to set the phase of the subs? And how does Audyssey deal with phase in such a setup?
Well, unless that Crown has a phase knob on it, you can't.
It doesn't. You can set independent volume levels for its two outputs, so you can level match. That you can do. And as far as the second part of his question, how does Audyssey deal with it? It just thinks you have one sub. It has no idea that you have two subs. It's like, well, here's some bass playing. You know that it's coming from 2 sound sources, but Audyssey doesn't know that. It just thinks you have 1 sub, which at the end of setting your level matching and setting your phase, in this case manually, at the end of that, you want to EQ it as though it's just 1 sub anyway.
Yeah.
You want a mono signal anyway. So you don't have to worry about Audyssey. It's the little part in the middle, which is, now, we first have to say, do you even need to fiddle with the phase? Because if you have a rectangular room and you have your 2 subs across the room from one another, or in diagonally opposite corners, or diagonally opposite across the room from one another, then you don't need to do this. That's the whole point of that placement. But maybe you don't have a rectangular room, which is very common, or maybe your subs are not placed across the room in a rectangular room. Then maybe you want to play with the phase like we've been talking about on a few of the more recent podcasts. So a little $100 device called the MiniDSP will let you do that. Because the MiniDSP will let you take the 1 subwoofer output, feed it to 2 separate subwoofers, and give you independent phase, volume, even independent EQ if you really want to get into it. I wouldn't advise doing that, but it has the capability to the 2 independent subs. So $100 MiniDSP, 2 in, 4 out will get this done for you.
And the way that Audyssey deals with phase is distance.
Yeah,
that's how it deals with phase. So what you could do and probably should do is run Audyssey, at least the setup part of it, with 1 sub attached, and that's it. And then do it with the 2nd sub attached, and that's it. And see what those distances are.
Yep.
That will tell you what, how out of phase they are with each other. And they're probably going to be pretty close.
Maybe.
They probably are. They might not be. Doesn't really matter, because what you're really going to do is you're going to level match both these subs and then just run Audyssey all once again with both of them attached, and then it'll do its thing. But if we were able to plug in both subs to Audyssey independently, it would adjust the phase using the distance.
The distance settings for the 2,
which it can't do anymore because there's
so to give you the capability to do that manually, the MiniDSP can do it for $100.
There you go. Not worth it, by the way. Don't spend money.
Lucas just started listening a couple of months ago, and he says he's hooked.
Yoo-hoo!
He's gearing up to ask a slew of bigger questions soon, but for now he only has 2 small questions.
All right.
He just bought a Marantz.
First of all, this is a lot of words for 2 small questions. I'm just looking at this. I am going to have to scroll at least twice. That's once. That's twice. No, I'm not even to the next guy yet. Okay, that's a lot of words, Lucas. But go on. You and Rob will have a lot of time to talk to each other and verbose word emails. Don't CC me. Go.
He just bought a Marantz in our 1606, which he's very pleased with, and is slowly putting together a surround system. For now, his mains are a pair of vintage, is it Dynaco?
I believe so.
Dynaco, yeah.
Dynaco A25XLs, and he's borrowing an older energy subwoofer from a coworker to see what a sub adds to his room. And he's also purchased a pair of Cambridge Audio Minx Min 12 surrounds.
All right.
He bought this particular Marantz because it has pre-outs for the front channels, which he wanted so he could use his NAD 7240p amplifier in case the rated watts per channel of the Marantz wasn't enough. The NAD amp is rated less than the Marantz at 40 watts per channel versus 50 watts, but the NAD specs say it has plus 6 dB of IHF dynamic headroom. Is this just marketing speak that's meaningless, or is it actually something special?
Yeah, remember that thing I said
like the Marantz have this kind of headroom anyway and just don't talk about it?
Yeah, it's exactly what I said before. This is exactly the sort of thing that this is. They're like, we have headroom. No one else talks about headroom. Like, yeah, everybody's like, why would we talk about a thing that everyone has? It's like trying to differentiate yourself because you've got a Ferrari's like, we have Ferrari red. Everybody's like, we got red too. It's a big deal. But yeah, so.
No, this is very much the standard. It's actually kind of a problem if it doesn't have this, which is why it's not really mentioned by anybody else. IHF, by the way, is what International Hi-Fi Foundation, which is like a nothing group. It's not a officially sanctioned body of any kind.
A couple of dudes in the garage that listen to headphones.
It's really not a thing. So yeah, the 6 dB of headroom that we talked about, that is, you've got your RMS, whatever the rated wattage is. In the case of the NAD, 40 watts per channel. In the case of the Marantz, 50 watts per channel. That is what it can deliver all day long, all the time. And then you double that and then double it again. So you go from 50 to 100 to 200. That's what the Marantz can do. That's 6 decibels of headroom. Or you go from 40 to 80 to 160. That's what the NAD can do. That's 6 decibels of headroom. But yeah, every amp can do this.
Yeah, I tried to find the specs on your speakers to figure out what they were. I just first he didn't tell us the room size, right? I can't imagine a world in which your Marantz is going to have a hard time powering these speakers.
Yeah,
but you know, you got an amp, you want to use it. I'm okay
Sure.
with that, but I don't think you need it, and it's fine. Just plug it in.
Yep.
Go.
If he uses the pre-outs on the Marantz, does power still get sent to the now unused speaker outputs, even when nothing is hooked up to them?
No, there's still a voltage being sent there, but there is no load to draw any amperage from the amplifier. So don't put a fork between the two binding posts, because it's not as though they are literally electrically shut off, right?
They're
so
not that.
Don't put a piece of tinfoil in between the two leads. Don't do that. There's still potentially a signal there, but
Generally
it's not as though
a good idea, no matter what. Yeah, that's just life advice Rob's
It's
giving you
not
here.
like there's wattage flying out into the air somewhere or anything. No, the power has to be drawn by a load. So yeah, that's you're not losing any power or anything.
So it is
like that.
ready to give power.
Ready to good. Yeah.
But there is no power asked of it. Remember,
that's
your
right.
speakers are pulling power from your amplifier. Your amplifier is not pushing power to the speakers.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So if you have no speakers, it's saying, I'm ready. Put me in, coach. Put me in. But there's nothing, so the power stays. The gas stays in the tanker. It doesn't go into the Prius.
There you go.
All right.
All right, PJ.
PJ is a new listener, and he can't stand the wait for each new episode. He's already binge listened to all the episodes available on Stitcher, which is only back to episode 477. There's plenty more on the website if you can't wait. And YouTube. There's plenty more.
You got a lot of them.
He has a 33 by 12 by 8 foot basement that's part theater, part cat room, and part kids' playroom. How much room are the cats taking up?
I'm hoping Kat's his wife, okay? And that she gets her own room down there, and there's not a room literally full of cats. Because that's, in my mind, you open the room, and you're like, holy crap, that's a lot of cats. And
We know there is at least one cat.
Yep. There is a picture
There's
of
a
one
picture
cat.
of at least one cat.
Oh, where's this picture of this cat?
Oh, here we go. Coming up. There we go.
There it is.
That cat gets its own room?
Well, part of the room. It's a big basement.
That is a fat cat.
33
I'm
feet.
I'm not insulting your cat, but that cat looks rotund. I'm just saying. Anyways, go on.
He's looking to upgrade his receiver and his subwoofer, or subwoofers, but budget only allows for one of these at a time. Which should he buy first?
And it sounds like he's basically got $500 to spend.
Yes. His current receiver is an Onkyo TXSR 503, which has no problems except for being pre-HDMI.
Ugh.
And his subwoofer is a Polk PSW10. If he goes for the receiver, he needs 2 HDMI outputs to allow for easy switching between the plasma TV and the projector, which he has a screen to drop down.
Is that subwoofer on a table? Is that what I just saw? Is subwoofer on the table? Is that the subwoofer on the table, or is that a little
I
refrigerator?
don't know if that's this. I think that's a little fridge. I think.
I would just say that
it's got a handle. It's got to be a little.
Any wife who would let you put a
no,
subwoofer on the table
Hold
is
on, I
a
think
keeper.
there's the subway. It's subway's at the front.
Okay, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
we have photo evidence.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I thought the
If
sub
he
was
goes-
on the table. I was like, holy crap, that is awesome. Go on.
If he goes for the amp, his budget allows for a Denon X 2200 or 2300. If he goes for a subwoofer, should he get an SVS PB1000 or a second Polk PSW10 to pair with his current?
I have to say I'm a little confused, to be honest with you, because he says he's got a 33 by 12 by 8 foot basement. That is,
Yeah.
So
It's
that
very
whole
long, but narrow.
room that we just saw, that's all one room. So there's not
Yes.
three. It's not subdivided into 3 different rooms. It's just one room. The kids play in there. The cat apparently streams videos or whatever, and then there's also a theater. It's all in the same room, long and narrow.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Yeah, so, oh man, I mean, normally we'd be saying upgrade your sub. So let's answer that second part first, because I would not bother getting a second PSW10. I would definitely, if what your budget allows is a PB1000, and that's not like going to be totally overtaxed in this room, even though it's a very long room.
Yeah.
It can contain, it's just a little over 3,000 cubic feet. So a PB1000 can contend with that.
I don't think he has room for a PB1000. It really doesn't look like it in there. He's got a lot of stuff in that room.
Maybe if you lay it on its side, because you can.
I think you should be looking at cylinders. Honestly, I think you should be looking at.
Where's he going to put a cylinder?
I don't know.
It's a narrow room. You could lay a cylinder on its side.
Do you think the PB is going to be any better? It's huge. That thing is huge.
Yeah, but it's like 15 inches wide, so if you laid it on its side, it should fit under the screen at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
So, I mean, if you were to get the subwoofer, I'd say that's easy. Get the PB1000, not a second Polk. And eventually get a second PB1000, because that would be the upgrade path.
I don't know where it's going to put that one.
You have an AV receiver that doesn't even have HDMI. I am very torn. I'll just give you my opinion. My opinion is, if it were me, I'd upgrade the receiver first in this case. I would. Because it's not as though you're going without sound, and it's not as though you even know what you're missing at this point. Whereas the receiver will definitely give you capabilities that you just do not have and wish you did. So, my opinion is get the receiver
What is he doing
first.
now without HDMI? Is he just running stuff directly to the component
from the...
or an external HDMI switch.
Oh, that's not it.
That's my vote.
I would say get HDMI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you guys are wrong. I'm not saying that. It is literally the least sexy thing that you can buy as a Navy receiver, though. As excited as I got about mine, you'll plug it in, and you're like, okay, I guess things are easier now, I suppose, and that's good. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. And yes, you're going to get a lot of value out of that. You're going to get a lot of value out of that. But sonically, I don't know that you're going to see a massive change. And I mean, if you get a decent AV receiver that has good Audyssey and everything else on it, there could be a pretty significant change in the sound. There'll be a lot of change in how easy it will be to do things.
And you'll get Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master Audio, and with the X2200, if he wants to add height speakers, he can even get a version of Atmos 5.1.2 anyway.
So he's got how much money to spend? $500, right?
I'm thinking somewhere around $500, because that's what these items cost individually. So.
I want to tell him to get new speakers, though. I think he should get new speakers. I think that
it's not like the Polks are terrible.
No, this guy with the old speakers.
Polks.
Oh yeah, the Polks. That's right. The Polks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and he says he can only do one at a time, but like, what are we looking at for the next thing?
Like, how long?
Right.
Is it like a year, or is it 10 years? How long is it going to be?
Like, what should I buy this week? I mean, is this like Infinite Gary kind of stuff, or is it like me, where I buy one thing every 2 or 3 years?
Right.
So.
Yeah. I'd still got to vote for the receiver in that case, man.
That's an old receiver he's got.
Tough to go without HDMI at this point. So.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Sort of relatedly, when looking at receivers, what are the differences between the various levels of Audyssey, silver, gold, etc.?
Resolution, essentially, and to some extent extension. So the different levels, there's what, silver, gold, and platinum, is that right?
There are, yep.
And silver is just multi-Q, if I remember correctly. Is that right? Or is it?
I think sometimes silver is multi-Q XT, because so it's a bit confusing, because they have 2 EQ, which is worthless. They have Mult EQ, which was their basic, Multi-Q XT, which is good and gives you finer resolution, and Multi-Q XT32, which is really good and gives you super duper fine resolution. Those are the actual Audyssey correction. The silver, gold, and platinum are packages.
Right.
Because Audyssey also has dynamic EQ, dynamic volume, sub EQ HT, low frequency containment, Audyssey DSX listening mode. So all of these things are in there. So silver, because there's bronze as well.
There's bronze as well.
Bronze is Mult EQ with dynamic EQ and dynamic volume. You put those three things together and you get bronze.
Right.
Silver is multi-Q XT, dynamic volume, dynamic EQ, of course. Those are going to be in all the things going up forward.
Right.
And I think if you add in Audyssey DSX listening mode or something, you get to silver. Or maybe that's the difference between silver and gold, because gold is also multi-Q XT, but then you add in, like, I think that's when you add low frequency containment, you get to gold. And then platinum is XT32 with sub EQ HD and all the other stuff together. So
Right.
the color things are packages of the technologies, but what you're really worried about most are multi-Q XT, and multi-Q XT32. Get the best you can. In your case, you're getting XT, so you're good to go. And it's going to be at the very minimum, a silver package there. So
Yeah.
that's
So
it.
XT is the one you want.
XT is what you want.
It's 11 o'clock.
We got to try at least one more or two more.
Yeah,
All right, Ed.
gotta put it
Ed's is pretty short.
That's
Yeah.
short.
So is John's, honestly.
Yeah.
So
Ping Pong
let's go.
Theater Ed has caved to the AV Rant peer pressure and bought an SVS PC2000 to replace his Boston PV700.
Sure.
Since he hates to have extra gear lying around, could he pair his old Boston with the SVS and have dual subs? He never thought the Boston was a bad-sounding sub before, but isn't sure whether it'll pair well with the SVS.
Change.
I wouldn't advise it.
The specs for this thing, it's 200 watts. It reaches down, according to CNET here, it reaches down to 29 hertz.
And that's according to specs.
That's the specs. All right.
Yeah. It's a 12-inch driver in sort of like a 14 by 15 by 16 is sort of the size of the thing.
Yeah.
Weighs under 30 pounds.
Yeah.
This is not an equivalent to the PC2000.
Not even
It
close.
really,
No.
really isn't.
First of all, you think that can you pair it? You could pair it. You could, yeah, absolutely do that. I don't think you should.
Yeah.
And you can, and while you have it lying around, fine. But honestly, it's only gonna reach down to 29, maybe.
Let's call it 35 to be realistic.
Maybe. And anything below that is just going to be this thing putting out noise that's going to...
Yeah.
It could be putting out noise or something that you recognized or identified as being bass, and your PC2000 is going to give you the actual stuff that you're going to have a harder time hearing because of the Boston. Now, it is a fine sub. The Boston PB
Sure.
700 is a fine sub. SVS is a completely different league, and it's really
when you get the PC2000, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna pick up that Boston and put it on top, and look at how cute that is. And you're not playing. You're not brothers. You're you've been replaced. Replaced is the right word. Yeah.
Yes.
Next.
Will audio codecs like Dolby True HD, DTS HDMA, Atmos, and DTSX ever become streamable, or will they die along with physical media?
Well, Atmos already is streaming, at least on Voodoo. It's already streaming. Now, it's streaming in its Dolby Digital Plus form. So it's
Right.
Dolby Digital Plus, which is a loss-E codec, with the Atmos extension on top of it. So it's already a streamable format. DTSX has a similar thing where it can be, the DTSX metadata is on top of DTS HD high resolution instead. It could be. So it already is, in other words. Atmos is already here. Now, True HD, DTS HDMA, they probably never will because it just eats up more bandwidth, and
It's what it comes down to.
seems to care about audio.
Yeah. Hey, we can't even get literally off of the disc on the Xbox One. We can't get what is on the disc into the receiver at this current time. They can absolutely stream this stuff. There's no doubt in my mind they can do it. They won't. It's a bandwidth hog, and no one cares about it. But the couple of people.
But the forthcoming ATSC 3.0 broadcast standard for broadcast Ultra HD has all but adopted Dolby AC4, and Dolby AC4 is basically Dolby Digital Plus with Atmos. That's basically what it is. So, Atmos looks like a thing that will be around in some form. It might not be the full lossless form with Atmos extensions on top of True HD, but Atmos on top of Dolby Digital Plus, it's not like it sounds awful. Still sounds very good. And that's already streamable and will be part of broadcast. So that'll be there. Atmos will be around.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Go on.
Okay.
John on Facebook. John's room is 4,400 cubic feet, but he's only sitting about 6 to 7 feet from his speakers. He's been using Monitor Audio Silver Series bookshelf speakers, but he'd like to upgrade to the Silver Series towers. The Silver 6 is a 2.5-way design with 6-inch drivers. The Silver 8 is a 3-way design with a dedicated mid-range driver. Given his short seating distance, is there a minimum distance necessary from each of the speakers in order for the drivers to sum together and produce a cohesive sound? And if so, is that distance greater for the 3-way speakers versus the 2.5-way speakers?
1 meter.
Yeah. I don't think that you should do this, John, to be honest with you. I sit about 6 to 7 feet away from my speakers, my tower speakers, and I feel they're completely unnecessary to be towers. I expected them to end up in a much bigger room than the room I'm currently in. I feel like you're going to spend this money on these towers unless you're, getting, not having subwoofers or something like that, which I hope that's not the case. Then you should be spending money on subwoofers and not these towers. I feel like you're gonna go, it sounds the same. I feel like that's what you're gonna say. It sounds the same. You're not switching speakers. You're not switching to a higher quality or within the same line or something like that. You're just getting a bigger model of the exact same speaker you currently have. I don't think you're going to hear a difference. The way you'll hear a difference is if you run them full range, and you shouldn't do that because of all the times we've talked about why you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he was thinking about, because we were talking about, there is that 500, that 80 to 500 hertz range, where your speaker is playing more than the subwoofer, and we were saying, like, if your room is larger than maybe 3,000, 3,500 cubic feet, somewhere in that range, then, the speaker is alone trying to pressurize that 500 hertz. So I'm pretty sure that's where this question is coming from. Everything adds up about that. So I think that's what he's considering. But at the same time, like, no, the reason I said 1 meter is because 1 meter is about, about 250 hertz, 300 hertz, something like that. Yeah. At that point, the sound is starting to become omnidirectional anyway. So 1 meter is like all speakers are measured. When they're measuring the frequency response of the speaker, what does the speaker do out in wide open space? They put the microphone 1 meter away, pretty much regardless of the speaker, because it's a matter of the wavelength, not the size of the drivers or the size of the cabinet. That doesn't matter. It's the wavelength we're worried about. So we just want the microphone to be far enough away that it's getting direct sound, and then the omnidirectional sounds that just go in every direction. We're not worried about those because those are going to go everywhere. So 1 meter is enough to do that. So it doesn't matter what the size of the speakers or how many drivers it has. You sit 1 meter away, the sound will sum together. So that's immaterial. But yeah, I think he's worried about that 500 hertz range, 4,400 cubic foot room, but then you're sitting so close. I have to agree with Tom. I don't think you're going to hear much difference.
I don't think you're going to hear a difference, Dan. I know you want them, and I think there's no reason. I mean, it's fine, but I think realistically, you're not going to hear a difference.
Yeah.
Go on.
So the Silver 8 speakers are listed as 4 ohms nominal, while the Silver 6s are listed as 8 ohms. Will that be of any concern with his Denon X4000?
No,
not in this close.
Yeah, no, these are monitor audio speakers. These are not dipping down to 1.2 ohms. These are staying above 3.2. They're well-designed speakers. The X4000 has plenty of amplifier power, and you're sitting this close. Man, are you sitting close? So a 4 ohm load would be no problem. But, as we just said, you really don't need the Silver 8s. So even if you are going to upgrade to towers regardless of what we say, there's no reason to go beyond the 6s, because I'm sure the 8s cost more. That's guaranteed.
We're going to have to do another podcast. We are so behind.
We are behind.
We are very behind. So, who was that we just said? Okay, so we've got JC, not JC, JC. Moani.
How come everybody but me forgets Moani?
I don't know.
I remember.
Jason S. Heath B. Oh God, that's a lot of questions, Heath. Jason P. left, and then whatever came in today.
Yeah. And a couple did.
And a couple did come in today. So, if you sent your question in on August 1st, or your name was one of those and your name is not one of these other people, wait a second, I said that all wrong. If you sent it in today, and your name is one of these people, we will be answering your questions next week.
Yes.
If you sent it in at any other point, and you didn't hear your name, send it to us again. Okay, you
Yeah.
send it. That way we will answer your question. To get your question answered, send it to question@avrant.com, which will go to Austin, our disembodied producer. You can also CC Rob at AV Rant, Tom at AV Rant. Go to our Facebook page, or I'm sorry, our website, www.avrant.com, where you can leave us a donation by clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, scrolling up, and which will give us a PayPal donation, as Kyle, Richard, Jay, and George did this week.
Yeah, Kyle, Richard, Jay, George, thank you all very much for supporting the podcast.
And thank you, Jay, for also supporting the podcast by letting HSU know that you bought your subwoofers because of us.
Yeah, love that.
All right, Facebook.com/AVRant podcast is a good place to go to get us. Twitter @FirstReflect for Rob, @AVRant_Tom for me, and Austin Pond, Austin for our producer Austin. He also has his own podcast. It's called We Watch Movies. Austin, what's your podcast about again? What is that about? I don't remember.
It is about unconventional uses for burlap.
I thought we did burlap again. Maybe it's a different.
No, we did wicker.
Unconventional uses now.
Unconventional uses. Yes.
Unconventional uses.
So
of
not sacks. We're not talking
sacks.
about burlap sacks.
Not the transport of potatoes.
Nah.
No,
none of that.
That'd be a sack.
No.
Also, I think I've seen crawfish and oysters in burlap before. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Probably as sacks.
Sack-related things.
But that's not what this podcast is about. It's the unconventional uses.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
all right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H.
And I'm Austin Pond. Now go out and listen to something.
There will be an after party, and it won't be long.